we have William Gardner on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. UK time to speak about conservative thought and philosophy. So, how are you, Lloyd? Is everything okay with you?
No, well, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. And yeah, so everyone, based on the discussion that I had this afternoon with Dr. Ariana Love, with the assertions that she made, and my request to back them up, I've decided to switch my talk from Islamic slavery, which was the largest and longest running slave trade in history. And in fact, slavery is permanently legal within Islam because it's never been banned formally, because the Sharia makes it legal and therefore it can never be banned. And also, it was at least 200 times larger than the Atlantic slave trade. So the Islamic slave trade unfortunately does not get discussed because the propaganda against the Atlantic slave trade, I'll do a very, very short overview and then I'll switch topics. So the Atlantic slave trade was responsible for approximately, to North America, when we speak of North America, roughly 350,000 to 500,000 black slaves that were taken, that were bought, not hunted down by the Americans or anyone else, but bought on the coast of Africa and then shipped across to America, to North America. So this number of 350 to 500,000 includes the Canadians, right? Including the slaves that went to Canada. Now, of course, what is failed to mention, what is not mentioned, is that at least 14.5 million slaves went to South America, bought by the nice brown people who used those slaves in South America. And of course, you have groups like the Portuguese and others, but slaves were very popular in South America too. Now, of course, let's say 300,000 slaves have now become 30-something million black population of America today, whereas the approximately minimum 20 million to 60 million or more, in fact, some numbers put it up as high as 60 to 120 million slaves were taken from Africa to Arabia. Of course, there are not a lot of black Africans living in Arabia today because the policy of the Muslims was to kill those slaves, right? First of all, should they have children, the children are killed. Should they have, and also they were castrated. So there was a very different set of rules applied to that. That's why you don't have a lot of black people in Arabia today, because those slaves are not allowed to reproduce. And also something like at least, 25, 30, well, at least a quarter of those slaves died on the journey. So you're looking at deaths of about 14 million potentially slaves died on the way to, or 25 million slaves died on the way to Arabia. This pales in comparison. Now, of course, we forget to mention, because it doesn't fit the anti-white, anti-European narrative, that the Africans also stole at least a minimum of 1.5 million whites from Europe. So now you're looking at, let's take it to the upper limit, 500,000 slaves went to North America from Africa, but at least 1.5 million white people were taken from Europe, to Africa. So unfortunately, blacks enslaved far more people, right, from Europe than people from Europe or European extraction enslaved blacks. So these are uncomfortable facts that they don't want to discuss, but I will get into that next time. So today I want to talk about Palestine.
Can you just
Yes?
can you just repeat the numbers again of how many Europeans were kidnapped?
So no one knows exactly, because there's about 300 years where the records are very, very bad, between I think like the 1200s and the 1500s. But you're looking at roughly 350,000 to 500,000 slaves went to North America. Roughly 14 or 15 million went to South America, and about 1.5 million up to possibly 5 or 6 million, but I'm using conservative numbers, were taken from Europe by Africans.
Incredible. Yeah, just one small update, because we are putting your sessions on our radio, and we are trying to promote it as much as we can. So at the top of the hour, Alex is going to put in some kind of a small jingle, if you don't mind, of like a
Sure,
few seconds.
certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, so shall we start speaking about Palestine? So I'm going to cover, shall we say, the other side of the story with regards to Palestine, things that are not normally discussed, things which are left out of the discussion because it doesn't again suit the narrative of those who are pro-Islamic, pro-Hamas, pro-Jihad, and of course anti-Israeli, anti-Western. So let's have a question. So let's have a short Q&A session here. If Palestine is a country, right, and if it's been a country that's been a long-standing country in history, we should be able to answer a few basic questions about it. When was Palestine founded, and by whom? And yeah, unfortunately, this is a question that they seem to have difficulty answering. What were its borders? What was its capital? What were its major cities? Because this is what we know. These are the typical kinds of historical questions we ask about existing countries in history. What was the underlying economy of Palestine? Can anyone give me a view or an indication as to what was the underlying economy of Palestine made of? Right. What form did the Palestinian government have? Right? Can anyone name at least one Palestinian leader before Arafat? Was Palestine ever recognized by a country whose existence leaves no room for interpretation? What was the language of the state of Palestine? What was the most common religion in the state of Palestine? What was the name of its currency? And we can go on like this, but understand they're going to have some difficulty, and I have asked these questions for some time now. I have yet to get any kind of answers from people. Now, of course, this is an accurate representation of the differences between Israel and Palestine, right? This is of course, for them, this is gaining, what would you call it? Reward from Allah, because sacrificing your children to Allah, obviously is it's jihad, so they gain great recognition. So this, of course, is happening in Palestine. This is quite recent. This is a couple of months ago. So Palestinians hanging the Nazi flag near Hebron. Okay, so I think we all know what the Nazis stand for. Now, in order to be a nation, you do have to meet certain criteria. You must have a ruler, an emperor, or a king. You must have national borders. You must have a currency, and you must have a flag. So, who were the rulers of Palestine? What were their borders? What was their currency? What was their flag? Again, these are things that should be correlated to a nation called Palestine. But then where? Well, where is it? Where's the archaeology? These are questions that, again, people simply avoid. Right? Now, people do claim that Arabs are descendants from Philistines, but again, this is something that is not going to be supported by the history. For instance, so I'm going to go through some different stories, some different links and so on that I'll present to you. But so, Fakistinians, as I call them sometimes, they claim that the ancient Philistines, right, the Falastini, because they call themselves the Falastini, are their ancestors, and it's true that they do take their name from the tribe of Goliath, Palestine, Philistine. But do they actually share DNA? And as I said, they call themselves the Falastini. So the Philistines were a seafaring people who came from Crete, which is the largest of the Greek islands. So if anything, historically, the Philistines are Greek. Their homeland is Greece. So the Philistines got the name from the Hebrew word plishtim, which means invaders, because Palestine means invaded land, because they invaded land that was then Israel. So now, the Philistines invaded Israel in the 12th century BC. Interestingly, they stayed close to the Mediterranean coast, and they never settled in Jerusalem or any cities that are claimed today by Palestinians. By the 7th century BC, the Philistines had been assimilated by the Assyrians. Then they were conquered by the Babylonians. And from there, they disappeared from the pages of history. And experts will tell you no one alive today could prove Philistine lineage. If the Fakistinians do want to claim so, they would have to acknowledge that their ancestral homeland is not Israel, but the Greek island of Crete. Now, the word Palestine derives from Philistia, the name given by the Greek writers to the land of the Philistines, who occupied a small pocket of land on the southern coast between Tel Aviv and Gaza. So the name, of course, was revived by the Romans in the 2nd century, right, CE, in Syria Palestina, meaning the southern portion of the province of Syria. And then it made its way into the Arabic language, where it has been used to describe the region since the early Islamic era. So that's the 7th century. Now, after Roman times, the name had no status until World War I, when it became when the British got involved, of course, and there's a whole wonderful set of, but it became the Palestinian Mandate, right? So at the end of the rule by the Ottoman Empire, it was adopted for one of the regions mandated to Great Britain. In addition to an area comprising present-day Israel and West Bank, the mandate included territory east of the Jordan River, now constituting Jordan, which Britain placed under administration separate from that of Palestine. Okay, so that's a little bit of history there. But now, so let's have a look at trying to answer some of these questions that I asked you earlier. So before Israel, there was a British mandate. There was no Palestinian state. There was no country called Palestine. Before the British mandate, there was the Ottoman Empire, not a Palestinian state. Before the Ottoman Empire, there was the Islamic State of the Mamluks of Egypt. There was not a Palestinian state. Before the Islamic State of the Mamluks of Egypt, there was the Ayyubid Empire, no Palestinian state. Oops, typo. Before the Ayyubid Empire, there was the Frankish and Christian Kingdom of Jerusalem, no Palestinian state. Before the Kingdom of Jerusalem, there was the Umayyad and Fatimid empires, no Palestinian state. Before the Umayyad and Fatimid empires, there was the Byzantine Empire, no Palestinian state. Before the Byzantine Empire, there were the Sassanids or the Sassanids, no Palestinian state. Before the Sassanids, there was the Byzantine Empire again. And before them, there was the Roman Empire. Before the Roman Empire, there was the Hasmonean state. Before the Hasmonean state, there were the Seleucids. Before the Seleucids, there was the Empire of Alexander the Great. Before the Empire of Alexander the Great, there was the Persian Empire. Before the Persians, there was the Babylonians. Before the Babylonians, there were the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, where the Jews get their name from, not a Palestinian state. And before the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, there was the kingdom of Israel, no Palestinian state. Before the kingdom of Israel, there was a theocracy of the 12 tribes of Israel. And before the theocracy of the 12 tribes of Israel, there was an agglomeration of independent Canaanite, pagan city kingdoms, no Palestinian state. So this little piece of land claimed by the Fakistinians has been everything except a Palestinian state. There is no Palestinian state in history. At no point has there been a Palestinian state. Any comments?
No, that's incredible. A very good presentation. You just forgot the Abbasid after the Umayyad.
Okay, well, probably, yeah. That's, I think, we had the thing that I removed. I've typed in the wrong thing there. I had the wrong thing. So, with Godfrey of Alexandria, that was something to do with the Crusades, but I accidentally. Yeah, so understand. So now, of course, Mahmoud Abbas was kind enough to state that, oh, we're Canaanites. So, about 3 years ago, Mahmoud Abbas made the claim that they were Canaanites. Now, just as the original Palestinians, the original Philistines, no longer exist, the Canaanites, they're not around anymore. Okay, they're certainly not around anymore. And the Canaanites were all pagans. They were not Muslims. Okay, so let me see if there's something I missed up here from what I was discussing. And, oh, what is interesting now, so they claim they're not Arabs. Okay, they claim their descendants, so the Palestinians claim their descendants from the Philistines, the enemies of Israel. Now, this is very, very interesting if you read from this article, because the giant Goliath issued the challenge unto Israel that if one man would beat him in combat, the Philistines would be slaves to Israel for eternity. And if we lost, we would be their slaves. Well, so David takes a little sling and a stone and he kills Goliath. So in theory, the Palestinians are supposed to be the slaves to Israel for eternity. Okay, so yeah, by their own mouths, according to at least the biblical legend, the biblical story, they are now the slaves of the Palestinians. But the truth is that once you examine who they are the abandoned refugees from 6 nations, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt, right, are the major components of which they made up, okay? And they told those people to stay put, and when they would come and kill all the Jews, let me just fix my typo here, those people could take the Jewish property and land and live there. Now, there's lots of stories around this that we can go. So anyway, they failed to kill the Jews in the 6-Day War. The Jews beat all 6 nations, and those nations who told those people that they could not return to the land of their birth, okay, they were no longer citizens of those nations, and they had to stay in place to be used as political pawns against Israel. So they are not descended from a nation of warriors, and they are, okay, so they are simply just, mostly just Jordanians, Egyptians, Syrians, and so on. Okay, so I need to clean up that article a little bit. So I'll continue here. Now, let's talk about this guy. Now, this is the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. We're going to get into his history as well. We're going to talk a bit more about him as we go. So the Grand Mufti, yes?
Can we please take a question from someone that I would like for him to talk?
Sure.
Eternal, can you go ahead, please?
You just moved along a little bit, but I wanted to ask you a question. At what point throughout the history of all of the changes that you have made, do the people disappear and a bunch of new people appear? Do the previous people just poof, die and disappear, they end because a new nation has been created? or a new conquerorship has been established? Are you saying when the Ottoman Empire conquered the land as it was known?
At which point was this Palestine? At which point were these people original settlers? When were they there?
It's irrelevant. The question is, you're stating that there were no Palestines, right? You're talking about the nation.
There's never
You're
been a
talking
Palestine
about
because the claim is that Palestine's an ancient state which has a long history. There is no such state. There's never been any such state. There's never been a Palestine with a long history. Palestine's a fairly new fiction.
people have found coins that labeled Palestine as a money supply. So
Those
your
would
first
be,
notion is
if that's the
incorrect.
case, and those would be
They get
Roman
money.
coins, because the Romans named the state Palestine as an insult to the Jews after the Jews revolted, and the Romans, of course, threw them out of the land.
Okay, but the notion that you said they didn't exist, it's not true. Those people.
Where
who claim
is
to be
so where at which point in history? Give me the so let's go. Okay, so when was Palestine founded and by whom? Answer the question.
I don't know.
So
But
no
yeah,
evidence.
but the question
What were the
you said
borders of
that
Palestine?
they did
What were the
exist. The
borders?
question is, they did exist.
No, what were
They
the
did
borders? Look,
exist.
if it did exist, then we should have evidence of it. So we don't know when it was founded, so no answer to that. What were the borders of Palestine? Do you know? Can you show me?
It was based upon the conquerorship of those who were around you.
Give
So
me
if
the
there was
borders. Show me a
Ottoman
map.
Empire,
Link me to a
you were
map. Give us some evidence.
part of the.
What
of
was
course
the
they don't have a
capital?
border, but
What was the
borders were
capital of
established for them
Palestine?
by-
What was the capital of
Well,
Palestine?
They claim Jerusalem, right? The same thing as the Jews claim, Israelis claim to be Jerusalem.
So the Philistines
Palestinians-
never settled in Jerusalem. The Philistines never settled in Jerusalem. They never got that far. They settled on the coast away from Jerusalem. So they've never
They don't have a
ever
claim.
they have no claim on Jerusalem.
If we go
What
on
were the major cities of Palestine? What were the major cities?
It's irrelevant. You're pointing.
No,
on
for there
things
to
that-
be a country, you have to meet country criteria. If you want to be a country, you have to meet country criteria. So what was the country?
criteria of a nation change. The current criteria is that you need to have an.
So you have no
established
criteria. You have no proof that a country, literally no proof that a country existed, yet you want to claim there was a country. I've just gone through a historical analysis of each one of the empires that existed. Not one of them was Palestinian.
No, like I said to you,
May I introduce something that
Sure.
I think Eternal's not getting? It was the Romans who labelled the region as Palestine.
Palestine, correct.
They
Yeah.
did not actually. There was no territory as Palestine. It was a region. Like today, we say Southern Jordan. It's not an. It's an area rather than a political territory. Big difference.
why?
Correct.
Why? Because people
The name was
associated-
revived by the Romans in the 2nd century, designating the southern portion of the province of Syria, which was, the reason is that it was an insult because they were insulting the Jews because they wanted to remind the Jews of the time that they'd been invaded by the Plishtim, the invaders, right? And Plishtim, don't forget, the Philistines means the invaders. So the Palestinians, if they did exist, were invaders, and they would have come from Greece, so they should want to go home to Athens.
No, wrong notion. We're talking about two different types of people.
You don't have evidence. You cannot prove any evidence. So look, you're talking about the Romans named it Palestine. No Palestinians named it Palestine. The Romans named it Palestine. So the Philistines
Why?
were Greeks.
Why? Why did they name it? Where did they come up with that name? Did it come up out of nowhere? Because
You're
the
obviously
people, the
not very
tribes,
smart. Look, I'm clearly dealing with stupid. Okay?
the
The
people
Philistines came
associated
from
themselves
Greece.
with the name,
I'll explain this slowly. If I had crayon, could you just mute the guy, please? Just mute him.
Unmuted him.
So look, the Philistines came from Greece, right? Came from the largest island of Greece called Crete. So they're Greeks. They were Greeks. They invaded land well south of Jerusalem. Now, their name comes from the Hebrew word for invaders, which means they're invaders. They're not obviously people who are native to the land, and they invaded when the Jews, the Hebrews, were already there. The Romans, after they kicked the Jews out, right, in revenge for the revolt, right, they named it Syria Palestina in recognition of the fact that this would insult the Jews, because it would remind them of the time that there was the invasion by the Palestinians. It was not a country. It had simply just a region that was named. Again, as you said, there was no political country that was known. So the fact that you can provide literally no evidence that demonstrates there was a country, right? It meets no criteria of a country, but yet you want to claim there was a country. If there was a country, you should be able to answer all of these questions, right? But the fact that you cannot, I don't have time for sophistry, right? If you're going to talk about France, we can talk about the borders, we can talk about the leaders, we can talk about the economy, we can discuss the currency. Unfortunately, the same does not account for this fictitious nation of Palestine. Right, now, let me continue. Let's talk about this nice guy. If you mention this guy on YouTube, your comments will disappear faster than you can blink. And we're going to talk at length about this guy. We're going to come into contact with him on a number of, well, many times. So this is the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj al-Min al-Husseini. And he will never be accused of loving Jews. Now, we'll talk about that. In fact, 70 years ago today, it says the Mufti, who was Yasser Arafat's uncle, met with Adolf Hitler in Berlin to discuss the final solution to the Jewish problem. Now, in 1937, the Mufti testified before the Peel Commission, which was looking into the causes of unrest between the Jews and Arabs in what was then known as British Mandate Palestine. Right? The Mufti made a stunning admission. Most of the land that belonged to the Jews, which we are accused of stealing, had been purchased by the Jews from the Arabs, and the Arabs were what we lawyers will call willing sellers. So the Peel Commission report had some very nice things to say about the Zionists and the impact on the land and on Arab society, and let's hear what they say. The Arab population shows a remarkable increase since 1920. It has had some share in the increased prosperity of Palestine. Many Arab landowners have benefited from the sale of land and the profitable investment of the purchased money. The fellahin, the Arab peasants, are better off on the whole than they were in 1920. This Arab progress has been partly due to the import of Jewish capital into Palestine and other factors associated with the growth of the Jewish national home. In particular, the Arabs have benefited from social services which could not have been provided on the existing scale without revenue obtained from the Jews. Much of the land being farmed by the Jews, now carrying orange groves, was sand dunes or swamp, and uncultivated when it was purchased. There was at the time of the earlier sales little evidence that the owners possessed the resources or the training needed to develop the land. The land shortage decried by the Arabs was due less to the amount of land acquired by the Jews than to the increase in the Arab population, because hundreds of thousands of Arabs flocked to the region after the Jews made an incredible commercial success of the land when they moved back. Now, we'll get back to this little Grand Mufti because he's a very important fellow, and he was a very good Nazi, by the way. He volunteered to fight in Hitler's army. He became a general. He became a Nazi general, and not only that, he raised something like 600,000 troops for the Nazis, and also he happened to form, if you guys know the SS, the Nazi Schutzstaffeln, right, the Death's Head division. He raised the largest SS division that fought in the Nazi army, 30,000 Muslims. Right, so we'll get into all of that, called the Hanshar. So, now notice there is no P in Arabic. So when the Arab Muslim armies conquered Persia, known as Parsi, the language of Persia became Farsi, right? Because they don't say P in Arabic. So the central core of the Persian nation is the ancient province of Pars, right? Pars, Persia, Parsi, which they now call Farsi. So why is this important? Because in Arabic, you cannot say Palestine. It's like the French cannot say France, okay? The Palestinians cannot even refer to themselves in their mother tongue as Palestinians because there's no such thing as a language called Palestinian. There is a language called Arabic. They call themselves the Falastini, right? They call themselves the Falastini. They speak Arabic. And of course, there's no P in Arabic, and the English word Palestine is a corruption of the ancient Roman word Palestina, Roman word, Palestina, right? Roman word, which was in turn a corruption of the word Philistia, the land of the Philistines, who were Greeks, right? A people who had disappeared from history hundreds of years before the Romans got to the area. And the Romans deliberately renamed the Jewish kingdom with the name of the Old Testament enemies of the Jews to insult them. This is a fairly well-known historical fact. So Palestine and Palestinians are words made up exclusively for the purpose of conducting propaganda against the Jews. Palestine is a fictitious country. The Palestinians are a fictitious people because they are just Arabs. They're Arabs from Saudi Arabia, they're Arabs from Egypt, they're Arabs from Jordan. Okay? So, I want to... So, fair enough, because look, I mean, with regards to the guy who just spoke, if you can give me some evidence, but you can't simply make assertions. That is not evidence. And I believe we clarified extensively, thoroughly, without ambiguity or doubt, Islam, within its Sharia law, teaches and makes it obligatory for Muslims to lie. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to treat things that are said without evidence with extreme skepticism. So let's have a look at the Middle East death toll. So now the Iran-Iraq war had a death toll of about 1.5 million people. The Syrian civil war, 300,000 plus. The Yemen conflicts, 237,000 apparently. Now let's look here at the Arab-Israeli conflict. This has been going on since 1948. Okay, these are all fairly short-term events, right? These are all fairly short-term events. This is since 1948, 84,000. If this thing was such a genocide, it's certainly producing a fairly low-level number of deaths relative to what we see here with these numbers. Okay, let me just put that on. So, any questions or comments from you, Harry, before I go on?
No, I just want to emphasize the size and the abilities of the Israeli army. So now that you're going to demonstrate those numbers, we have to take into consideration that if Israel wanted to destroy the countries in the area, it would take them hardly more than just a few days.
Okay, so, and we also, I think we can fairly state that if Israel dropped its weapons, gave up its military, the Arabs would murder the Jews. And of course, if the Arabs stopped fighting, there would be peace, because Israel would not simply attack the Arabs with no cause. In fact, the Arabs gave up... So the Israelis gave up the Golan Heights, which according to international law, they won fairly because they were attacked by Egypt, they counterattacked, they won, and then they took that land, and they handed the land back.
No, Lloyd,
yeah?
You're making a mistake. It's not the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights belong to Syria, and
Oh,
they
sorry.
took it in the Yeah, you're talking about Sinai.
Sinai, sorry, my bad. Yes, you're right. My bad. Sorry about that. Yeah. So they handed the land back to Egypt. Yes, you're right. Yeah, So they handed the land back. They had no need to hand that back because even according to international law from the UN, they could well have kept on to that land. Okay, there was no reason for that to do that. But now let's change. So where of course the Israelis, while they handed the land back, the Arabs want all the land and they want to drive the Jews into the sea, which is a call for genocide. And all the genocide supporters, of course, gleefully sign up for all of that. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I mean, something that people may or may not know. So let me just bring up this link. Okay, so there are a couple of articles that I can bring up on this one, but there's a couple of articles I can bring up with regards to this. But first of all, here you've got, the KGB were the good guys and the USSR were all the good guys, right? Because KGB is the good guys, as we all know. It has actually become well known that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was a KGB agent, right? So he actually worked for the KGB. Now, there are other stories we can get into with this, but clearly you've got a problem here with this guy. I'll get into this story as well a little later. So we'll talk more about that, okay? Now, interesting, let's just go and talk about this again. Facts about Israel, okay? Israel did become a state in 1312, okay, BC, which is 2,000 years before the rise of Islam, okay? Arab refugees from Israel began calling themselves Palestinians in 1967. This is only after the statehood of Israel, right? And then after conquering the land in 1272, the Jews ruled it for 1,000 years and maintained a continuous presence there for over 3,000 years. So the only Arab rule following conquest in 633 BC lasted only 22 years. So if you want to claim there was Arab rule, then it was 22 years worth of it, which is not a whole lot. Then for over 3,300 years, Jerusalem was the Jewish capital, right? It's never been the capital of any Arab or Muslim entity. It has always been the capital of the Jewish people. So Even under Jordanian rule, East Jerusalem was not made the capital, and no Arab leader came to visit it. If it was so important, why did the Arab leaders not make use of it as a capital? Jerusalem is mentioned 700 times in the Bible. It's not mentioned once in the Quran, right? King David founded Jerusalem. Muhammad never set foot in it, although he does claim that he went there on a flying horse, right? And he saddled his horse there and he went to the furthest mosque, which just says the furthest mosque. There's no claim as to what it is, but they simply said it's Jerusalem. The fact is there was no mosque in Jerusalem at the time because there were no Muslims in Jerusalem at the time, right? Now, Jews pray facing Jerusalem, Muslims face Mecca, okay? So, yeah, in 1948, the Arab leaders urged their people to leave. They promised to cleanse the land of Jewish presence, okay? So understand there were things that happened there, and then these people are simply being used as propaganda pawns, right? I'm not going to go through now. There are 22 Muslim countries, some of them with lots of open space, not counting Palestine. There's only one Jewish state, but of course the Muslims want to deny the Jews, a homeland, right? So they want to deny these people a homeland. So now, okay, fascinating. I'll move on from that. So let me go to see if there's anything here that I want. Nope. Okay, they've also rejected. So before moving to the next set of slides, so numerous peace efforts have been rejected by the Palestinians. We've got 1947, the year 2000, 2003, 2002, 2007, 2008. Understand there are numerous of these peace plans that have been completely rejected because they don't want peace, they want war. They want to wipe out the Jews. This is the call because Islam, to bring the end times, for Muhammad to come back, right, the Jews have to all be killed by the Muslims. We've discussed that in the past. Okay, I'm not going to get into this at much depth right now, but this is Pallywood propaganda. So yeah, I'm going to move on to the next thing. So let me just do this quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up another piece of history that you may or may not want to explore, but you may want to look at the wonderfully, this is called the Soviet-Palestinian lie. So the PLO, so this is from evidence that came up not that long ago. The PLO was dreamt up by the KGB, which had a penchant for liberation organizations. This is from the man regarded as the most important defector from the Soviet Union to ever go to the US, Ion Mihai Patsepa. He was the former chief of the Foreign Intelligence Services of Romania. And he says, first the KGB destroyed the official records of Arafat's birth in Cairo, then replaced them with fictitious documents saying that he had been born in Jerusalem and was therefore a Palestinian by birth. Now the Islamic world was awaiting petri dish in which we could nurture a virulent strain of America hatred grown from the bacterium of Marxist-Leninist thought. Islamic anti-Semitism ran deep. We had only to keep repeating our themes that the United States and Israel were fascist imperial Zionist countries bankrolled by rich Jews. This is apparently a quote by Yuri Andropov, the former KGB chairman. So the whole concept of the Zionist countries bankrolled by rich Jews is modern propaganda, right? Because after the Six-Day War, when the Jews fully trounced the Arabs, the Russians were heavily embarrassed, okay? They were incredibly embarrassed because despite their training, funding, and weapons, the Arabs were just simply outfought. And they realized that they could not defeat America and they could not defeat Israel militarily, therefore they had to do it utilizing propaganda, right? So thousands of people were trained to push this party line and to make that idea concrete in people's minds, right? So as early as 1965, the USSR had formally proposed in the UN a resolution that would condemn Zionism as colonialism and racism. So that was the start of the propaganda campaign. Although the Soviets did not succeed, the UN turned out to be overwhelmingly grateful, right, for Soviet bigotry and propaganda, right? So in November 1975, the first resolution, 3379, condemning Zionism as a form of racism and racial discrimination was finally passed because it's so nice to support the communists, okay? So Mahmoud Abbas, president of the PA, was a KGB spy in Damascus in 1983 and was discarded as a historical curiosity, but now we know that the man actually was a KGB spy. And of course, Yasser Arafat was also another KGB plot. Right. Moving on. Let me go to... Okay. So let me see. Okay, I'm going to want to go to this here. Now, lots of people want to deny the Holocaust. Okay, what is fascinating is that you've got this situation here that says it's hard to deny a Holocaust your father saved Jews from. Now, here you've got Muslims who are recognized as righteous by Jews for their family having rescued Jews during the Holocaust. It says here, Sheikh Ibrahim Mokhra views a new Board of Deputies display on righteous Muslims during the Holocaust. So, of course, his family actually saved Jews from being killed during the Holocaust, which many people will tell you never happened. But yet, as they said, it's very hard to deny Holocaust your father saved Jews from. Something worth looking at, something worth reading if you have time. Any questions before I go on?
Yes, we have a question. One
Sure.
second. Jake, go ahead, please.
Hi, Lloyd.
Hi there.
It's just regard one quick one was when you said that the Jerusalem wasn't mentioned in the Quran. What was it referred to as on when he went there on his horse?
The mosque is just called the furthest mosque. I think it's called the Al-Aqsa.
Oh,
the
okay,
Al-Aqsa
so
mosque,
and the
the
hadiths
furthest.
interpret, and then the hadiths interpret it what they want, like they do all over the place.
They just assert that it's Jerusalem. Yeah, I think they just said they went from the nearest mosque to the farthest mosque. But of course,
It's
there was
like in they say in the Bible that they talk of the coming of Muhammad because the light will come back in later on, and they're like, oh, this must have been Muhammad, isn't it?
yeah. So Muhammad has a dream. Now, I can go into this another time, but there's a massive dispute over whether it really happened because lots of people said it literally happened, but Muhammad's wife literally disputes it, and she says he never left because they say that he literally went in body to heaven and he met Allah. So he flew on a horse, or we don't know if it's a horse or a mule or something called the Burak, right? And he traveled on this creature, this flying creature, and he stabled it in Jerusalem. He prayed, and then he went up to heaven, to paradise, to the seven heavens to meet Allah, and he met Moses and he met Jesus and so on. His wife states he never left, right? She says anyone who tells you that's a liar, whereas so many scholars will claim that he actually physically left in body, and his wife disputes it. So
yeah, it's neurotic. So I'm totally just before my next little quick one. I realise that this is totally neurotic, and just clutching onto some sort of institutional mind control cult, whatever it is. But just to bear in mind, so when the British when we got invaded over the years by Saxon, Viking, what was it, Normans? Well, maybe I'm not sure, they might have been here, but Wales translates as from the word walia, which means foreigner. So Wales actually means foreigners, which is why Cornwall is Cornwall, as in corn foreigners, because they were the original Britons that managed to protect themselves down over the moors there. They used that as like the Wales used the River Severn and the mountains to protect themselves. Okay. So Corno, it was called Kornu, Cornu, and then it got called Cornwall by the invaders. So just to bear in mind that, I don't agree with Palestine and all the ideology and all the cultish stuff, but I wouldn't say that anyone that was an invader, it's illogical, I think, to say that we'd have to go back to our original place, because Wales could say that about us, and rightfully so. All the English should go back to the Northlands and Germany and France. And
yeah, but they're well established and well integrated and not trying to kill the rest of the population. So, good on the Welsh for not trying to murder the English. Whereas, unfortunately, the Palestinians are very much intent in killing all the Jews, because this is something that they have to do to bring glory to Allah and to bring the end times. So, slightly different issue here. Although, I believe if you look at some of the history, the Danish at one time invaded England as well, and they started a bloodline which has been completely wiped out because they were so hated by the British utterly wiped them out eventually. And there's almost no trace of the Danish bloodline within the English the genetics of the English population, because they were so hated. So there are others who integrated, and there are others who were just wiped out. They were so much hated.
Yeah, it's a different scenario. We've always got to work with the now time and what's actually happening, and obviously forgive other past.
Yeah. Also, I should mention. Okay, so Islam works on a concept of what is called waqf. Okay, waqf means endowment, but at least they'll tell you it means endowment. But if you look it up, I can't remember the exact meaning. Actually, let me try and find it right now, so that'll be a good idea for me to actually try and find waqf, but to find the other meaning of it. Endowment, charitable, that's one meaning, but that is not. So basically, once Muslims invade an area, that area is now waqf. It's an endowment for the future. It is taken for the glory of Allah, and it must be maintained by the Muslims. If they ever lose it, they then have to find it again in the future. They have to reclaim it. So understand, any land that they have invaded is Islamic in perpetuity, eternally, forever. Okay? Any land that Muslims invade is always and forever Islamic. So that is where they get the basis of their claim that this is Muslim land, because they once invaded it for 22 years, and therefore it is now in theory Islamic forever, and they must reclaim it. They have to invade. So Spain must be taken back. Any place that they've invaded in the past must be taken back. Let me find if I can see what the word waqf. So in law, the founders of a charitable trust, okay, looks like an endowment designated for the Muslim community as a whole. Looks like they don't have that discussion of it here from within the Islamic law. Okay, no, they don't have that discussion here within Islamic law. So, but as I said, it is waqf. Now, okay, so this is the Palestinian Authority logo, which features 2 AK-47s and a grenade on top of Israel, which obviously is because Islam's a religion of peace and the Palestinians are peaceful, right? The Palestinian Authority's Fatah party says incitement in Israeli schools poses a threat to Palestinians. Of course, we do know from plenty of videos and such that they are teaching their 3-year-olds how to use knives to cut the heads of dolls, which of course is indoctrination, teaching these children to murder. Okay, now let's have a look at this. This is a man you may know as Adolf Hitler. This is the Palestinian Grand Mufti, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, we discussed earlier. He volunteered to fight for the Germans because he wanted to kill Jews, right? So what happened was, he, as a good Nazi, he decided to raise troops. He raised, I think, ultimately like 600,000 troops who went and fought on behalf of the Nazis and the SS. These, of course, are the fezzes, the Turkish caps here. And this is him doing the Nazi salute. And he was a wonderfully good Palestinian, right? And in fact, he is no different to the, well, you know, Hamas and PLO and so on, owe him a debt of gratitude. This, of course, is him with, I think this is Heinrich Himmler, number 2 in the, well, the head of the Air Force for the Germans. So this is him again, parading around with famous Nazis, yes? Okay, so this is him again, very happily inspecting troops and talking to his troops, okay, in the Nazis. And this is him again with Himmler, SS Commander Heinrich Himmler, okay, wishes, warm wishes to Mufti Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Okay, once again. Now, of course, here you've got Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the former Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, living in Nazi Germany from 1939 to 1945 at the opening of the Islamic Central Institute in Berlin. Right, so let's continue. This again is the Hajj Amin al-Husseini, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and the highest ranking Muslim political leader in Palestine at the time, who was a dedicated Nazi, a volunteer Nazi, while we're at this. And of course, Islam und Judentum, Islam and the Jews, right? So this was some of their little reading material for their Muslim fezzes. You see, these are Muslims wearing their fezzes. And of course, again, Nazi SS commander who wished Grand Mufti success in the fight against the Jewish invaders, right? Because of course the land is waqf, and therefore it belongs to the Muslims forever. And of course, that's the little German helmet. And here we go. This is November 1943. Okay, more photos of our Grand Mufti. Put these on Facebook and watch him disappear. Okay, so he was Palestinian leader and Grand Mufti reviewing Nazi troops. Okay, so you can find more about this. There's an interesting book on this, Islam and Nazi Germany's War. Okay, and then of course he did say, slaughter Jews wherever you find them. Their spilled blood pleases Allah, our history, and our religion. So this, as you can see, was a very peaceful man who only wanted peaceful murder, not violent murder whatsoever. Now, of course, it should be noted that within, when we've mentioned before when I spoke about jihad, that the idea of wearing some kind of armband or some kind of signature that sets you apart from others is common to Islam. It's called the well, you become a dhimmi. They mark you to make sure you stand out and are always recognized as not being a Muslim. These are ideas that Hitler would have derived from Hajj Amin al-Husseini, right? And of course, the idea of burning Jews rather than simply killing them and burying them, one was expedience, and two, when Jews die, right? For instance, if a Jew loses a leg and he gets buried, he needs to be buried with that limb so he can be reconstituted whole in the Jewish concept of the afterlife. Whereas if they were burned, they would not be able to reach the afterlife, and this, of course, was an insult to the Jews, right? It would be further trauma given to the Jews. So this was part of the idea that I would think would have come from Hajj Amin al-Husseini, right? And of course, he was called in this book Hitler of the Holy Land, right? Because he had views very much in keeping with those of Hitler, and he also most certainly, according to Islamic doctrine, would have wanted the Jews to be killed. Any comments or questions before I go on?
Any questions, guys? If you do, please raise your hand. Dave, I think you wanted to say something earlier.
Yeah, when you were giving the timeline for the various territories, the invasions of that territory, I'd love to see the dates on that. I know it'd been a lot of work to do, but it kind of fits in with what I've been looking at. And the other thing I wanted to say was that it's been a big question for me for decades. Why is that area geographically of such amazingly geopolitical significance? And I think you're highlighting highlighting exactly what it is. This is an old conflict for control of a very geostrategically important part of the earth.
I guess so. I mean, there must be some sort of reason why it's important. But as I said, the whole concept of waqf is very, very important to them. Okay. Let me see. I need to find something here. And I'm going to go here. So I want to bring up something else that you may or may not be familiar with. So this book here, right? So let me see. The Thule Society. That's what I need to find. Here we go. I want to mention, I've mentioned this in the past, so I want to bring this up. So hold on, Dave. In that discussion, I'll come back to it. I'll show you what I have of a timeline. But this book is called The Secret Practices of the Sufi Freemasons, right? It is written by a man called, this is not his real name, it's his adopted name, Baron Rudolf von Sabottendorf. He is of German extraction. He decided to move to Turkey, right? And of course, he learned the practices of Freemasonry from Sufi Muslims, the Islamic teachings at the heart of alchemy. And he wrote this book probably in the 40s, maybe sooner, I don't know. So, now
He's
let
the
me...
one from the Tool Society,
Correct.
the cold part.
Right. So let me just read a little bit about this guy. Baron Rudolf von Sabottendorf, right, was a Freemason and a practitioner of alchemy. We'll get into that another time. In 1900, he moved to Turkey, where he met the Jewish Termudi family, which is really fascinating, if untrue, because when they speak of the Jewish Termudi family, they're speaking of Sufis, and these are Muslims who had converted in I think the 1600s. So these people had been at that point 1700s. So they'd been Muslims for at least 3 centuries. So it's interesting that Islam has to be protected at all costs, and they've got to call them Jews despite the fact that they are Sufi Muslims, right? So fascinating bit of twisting of the history there, who introduced him to Rosicrucianism and led to his initiation into a local Masonic lodge. Now, of course, they leave out the Sufi connection because, again, Islam has to be protected at all costs. So in 1910, he founds a lodge of the Bektashi order, Sufi order, Islamic Sufi order, in Constantinople. He returns to Germany in 1917 and he founds the occult Thule Society, right? It's an occult organization that led to the German Workers' Party, right, in 1918, and then in 1919 was joined by Adolf Hitler. Right, and Adolf Hitler took the Thule Society, which was based on Sufi occultism, Islamic occultism, who then transformed that party, in that organization, into the Nazi Party. In history, they will always talk about the Thule Society, this occult organization that was so well entrenched amongst the Nazi elite, right? And they'll say how it became the Nazi Party, but they won't tell you that a Muslim founded it. Someone who was trained in Sufi occultism, right, founded the organization that became the Nazi Party. Now, if you ask yourself, a Muslim occult society, which became the Nazi Party, why would Hitler adopt what is most certainly Islamic ideas? Any comments or thoughts about that?
No, I don't have much to say. Eternal, whom you spoke to earlier, wants to say something again. Would you like
Put him
to
on.
allow
Let's
it?
listen. I mean, yeah, just put him on. Let's hope he doesn't waffle and just deny.
Yeah, let's try to be. Okay. Eternal, please.
Yeah, if you just let me finish and then that'll be it. You know, I'm not going to argue. I just want to make a statement, see what you think. That's it. That's all that I want to say. About the Mufti, earlier, the statement you said, I just noted, isn't it possible that the Mufti did what he did purely because he was afraid of the induction of the Jews to his land, and he found a friend that is also stopping this process, and Hitler promised him a lot of things, and also the Rothschild promised the Mufti quite a lot of things, that they will only bring Jews to the land, few of them, and they won't overpopulate it. So he was playing the playing ground to win, you know, his nation or his rule, and ensure that the Jews don't overtake. That's what I
You're
want to bring up.
presupposing a nation that never existed, and of course he went and looked at Hitler and said, "Hey, let me go talk to the good guys," right? Because Hitler was the good guy, right?
No, I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm just saying he played.
So the Mufti decided to volunteer for the Nazi army and raise 600,000 Muslims, and founded the largest SS division for Hitler, made up of 30,000 Muslims, because he thought it was a good idea to go and genocide the Jews, right?
Well, to stop the Jews coming from his nation, he thought that would probably be the
The
best
Jews were already
option for-
living there at that point. In fact, as we know, they'd been there since 1,300 years BC.
And again, Eternal, you all keep saying nation, which you didn't provide any evidence for its existence. You said yourself it's a tribes, and those tribes came from Arabia and Egypt and other countries. They never had a formal state or kingdom or anything like that.
Yes,
Right.
many nations did not do that until they had independence, right? So if Palestine was allowed to have an independence before Israel's creation, Palestine would have existed before the
There
creation
was
of Israel.
no... Yeah, but that presupposes there was a nation. There was never one. There was never a Palestinian nation. There was never a Palestinian people. The Palestinian people, if you use the Philistine argument, which was original, the original argument was they're the Philistines. Well, the Philistines are from Greece, so maybe that you all need to pack up and go home to Greece. Head off to Crete.
Perhaps. I'm just
So leave the Israelis alone. In fact, I should have called this presentation the Palestinian occupation of Israel. In fact, it is the Palestinian occupation of Israel, and the Palestinians need to stop occupying Israel. So, and now, of course,
Lloyd, actually, the Palestinians who are living inside Israel as citizens, they are extremely happy. And if you will suggest for them to move to other Arab countries, oh my God, they are not going to like it at all.
that is also true. That is also true. So tell me something also, Eternal. Where are the Jews from Morocco? Or they're all dead, chased out, genocided by the Muslims there? Where are the Jews of all Africa? Because we know that North Africa was very much a Jewish... there were loads of Jews all over the place. Where are the Jews of Yemen? Because Yemen was a Jewish country. Did the Muslims kill them all? So where exactly? There's like how many? There's 51 Islamic countries in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Right, where are their Jews? What happened to all their Jews? Is that too uncomfortable to talk about?
No, it's not. I fully agree with you. Of course, the Islamic State went about slaughtering North Africa and all of it.
Is this an aberration, or is this a normal, standard, everyday
It's not
part of
normal.
Islamic doctrine?
No, I don't like what the Islamic nations or the Islamic Caliphate did to the North.
It's standard Islam. Islam is required to. There's no option for Muslims. This is what they have to do if they want to follow the Sharia.
Yes, certainly.
So maybe the Jews need to be a little concerned about what Muslims have in mind for them, because, of course, as you know, just like the Iranians are a theocracy, Hamas is a theocracy. The PLO basically wanted to establish an Islamic theocracy, and of course the PA is an Islamic theocracy. And we know what happens in these Islamic theocracies. They follow the Sharia.
I'm against Islam by all means. I'm just arguing, just debating about it.
1 second, guys. Quickly, you have a private message in the admin group, if you can, for a second.
All right, so is there anything else?
Thank you, Eternal.
Okay, so...
It's
Yep.
almost the top of the hour, so...
Sure, no worries.
Alex.
It's I'm trying to get hold of Pickley because whilst you've all been talking, I've been made the jingle for it, and I need Pickley to play it. But I'll just add it in afterwards, guys. Don't worry about it this time. We'll sort it next week.
Okay, no worries. If you want me to add it in, I guess I can do that too on my HD version of the video. So, understand the Nazi Party...
I'll send it you over then, Lloyd.
All right, the Nazi Party has a direct link to Islam. Okay, it came out of Islam. Understand? The Bektashi order is the primary order of the Sufis. Now, it should be noted that if you look at Al-Azhar University, which is the major Islamic seminary, which is 1,000 years old. It is the most respected Islamic seminary in the world, and it produces their imams that they send around the world, the most respected imams. This is also where Barack Obama went when he became president. It was the first place he actually went in Egypt, was to go and bow and scrape in front of the muftis at Al-Azhar University. What's interesting is that the Al-Azhar University, they not only have the 4 Islamic schools of jurisprudence that they teach there for these imams, they also teach all 7 of the major Sufi orders. And in fact, the rector, the head of Al-Azhar University today, is a Sufi. And the former head is also a Sufi, or was also a Sufi. So understand the Sufis, and of course he was I believe one of them is going to be a Bektashi Sufi. So understand that Sufism teaches this occult Gnosticism. In fact, if we look up the word occult and we go here to Hamas, let's have a look at the Hamas Charter, Article 2. Right, let's have a quick look at this. This is the Hamas Charter. This is Article 2 of the Hamas Charter. The Islamic Resistance Movement, their name, is one of the wings of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. The Muslim Brotherhood movement is a universal organization which constitutes the largest Islamic movement in modern times. And Hamas is characterized by its deep understanding, accurate comprehension, and its complete embrace of all Islamic concepts, of all aspects of life, culture, creed, politics, economics, education, society, justice, and judgment, as well as the spreading of Islam, education, art, information, and what is this? The science of the occult. Hamas teaches the science of the occult and the conversion to Islam. Now, what the heck do they mean that they teach the science of the occult? Understand, because they are teaching Sufism. Sufism is Gnostic occultism, right? It is Gnostic occultism. Now, of course, I've mentioned earlier, I'm going to go back to this whole thing here. Let's go back to this little section on the Templar Knights and this here, right? So let me see here. Let me find this section on the Templar Knights. Let me think of what it is that I need to find. Okay, so this is from Idris Shah, from his book on the Sufis, right? This is the the introduction written by Robert Graves. And let's see what it tells us here. Now, you'll find this very, very interesting. The Sufis are an ancient spiritual Freemasonry, because the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood is a Sufi and a Freemason, right? Hassan al-Banna is both a Sufi and a Freemason. And of course, al-Banna means builder, which is the Arabization of the Masons. The Masons are builders. And this is simply Hassan al-Banna, the builder, the Mason, right? So that's where his name derives from. So the Sufis are an ancient spiritual Freemasonry. Now, this, of course, is evidence that we have to ignore because it goes against the standard narrative, so Freemasonry itself began as a Sufi society, and you'll find Sufis will make this claim saying they're the original Sufis, the original Freemasons, and Western Freemasonry is just a pale imitation of their original Freemasonry. So, Freemasonry first reached England in 924 to 939 and was introduced into Scotland, disguised as a craft guild at the beginning of the 14th century by the Knights Templar. And notice what they say here. It's Reformation in the early 18th century. That's the Freemason Reformation. It's Reformation in the early 18th century London by a group of Protestant sages who mistook its Saracen, its Muslim, Islamic terms for Hebrew, has obscured many of its early traditions. So unfortunately, these Protestant idiots, these priests, right, these Protestants or whomever they were, sages, they found some Freemason documents, right, which were Sufi documents written in Arabic script, which they thought was Hebrew script, so they blamed the Jews. When he states here that no, these were Sufi documents, these were Arabic documents, it's the Muslims. But of course the Jews got blamed with it, and now the Jews are the Freemasons and they're going to take over the world and eat your babies, right? And Richard Burton, translator of the 1001 Nights, being both a Freemason and a Sufi, first pointed out the close relation between the two societies. Now, of course, because this doesn't fit the standard narrative, I believe we have to ignore this because, as you know, the first rule of being an objective researcher is to dismiss and deny any evidence that goes against the established KGB narrative. Any comments or questions, Harry?
No, please continue.
Right, so let's go back to our little mufti here. Okay, so the Mufti was very, very active. Okay, now we've got the Nazi connection to Islamic terrorism by Chuck Morse, the Nazi connection. So, of course, these guys were very close. Okay, so this is Haj Amin al-Husseini, who in many ways was as big a Nazi villain as Hitler. And to understand his influence in the Middle East is to understand the ongoing genocidal program against the Jews of Israel. Al-Husseini was a bridge figure in terms of transporting the Nazi genocide in Europe into the post-war Middle East. As the leader of Arab Palestine during the British Mandate period, he introduced violence against moderate Arabs as well as against Jews. He met with Adolf Eichmann in Palestine in 1937. Then he went on the Nazi payroll as a Nazi agent. Al-Husseini played a pivotal behind-the-scenes role in instigating a pro-Nazi coup in Iraq in 1941, so he was a good guy. Okay, so Eternal, you can see he was a real good guy. He just wanted to save his land, right? Because, as you know, the Jews were taking over Iraq, I guess, in urging Nazis and pro-Nazi governments in Europe to transport Jews to death camps. Because he didn't just want to stop them, he wanted to murder the lot of them. I guess it was just because he didn't want to, have them move to Israel. So he figured, hey, let's just kill them all. And in training pro-Nazi Bosnian brigades and in funneling Nazi loot into post-war Arab countries. So clearly he was a good guy, right? So understand now because of this man's influence, because of what he did, he's basically, a lot of his ideologies, a lot of his thoughts, and he was a friend of Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And of course, a lot of his ideas made its way into Al-Qaeda, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and of course, so he has a legacy that unfortunately extends through history, okay? So, yeah, now understand, there were numerous pogroms and riots, right, targeting Jews, okay, that extended through history well before the establishment of the British Mandate, well before the establishment of an actual Israeli state, okay? So the Arabs had been fighting and killing Jews and rioting long before there was even an actual country called Israel, okay? And of course you've got this little story here, okay? Let me see. So I'll skip all of this, but understand these are things that you can look up. But he did start up, okay? He delivered a speech where he started what's called the Hanshar, right? The SS troops. I'll get into that. So he founded what's called the Hanshar, right? These were, let me see. Yeah, that's him with some of the Nazi leaders again. So he founded what is known as the Hanshar, okay? The cream of Islam, as he called them. So he creates the Hanshar division of Nazi Muslim soldiers in Bosnia, which he calls the cream of Islam. It becomes the largest division of the Third Reich army. Some numbers put it as high as 30,000 men. and they participate actively in the genocide of Serbian and Jewish populations. The Hanshad was the name given to the dagger worn by officers under the Turkish Ottoman Empire. So of course he grandazed himself as an Ottoman because the Ottomans nearly took over Europe. Muslim soldiers pledged allegiance to Nazi regime, an official statement prepared by Heinrich Himmler, head of Nazi SS troops. Now, interesting that you cannot talk about this. YouTube will delete your comments. Facebook will delete your comments. Okay? And this is not something that they want to discuss. That's the little sword of Ali or the sword of Muhammad, depending who you ask. And there you go. So these are, now notice here, these are Muslim members of the Waffen SS 13th Division at prayer during their training in Germany, 1943. And if you look at videos of this, you'll actually see German officers praying. Here, it's crazy when you actually see German officers. These are not ethnic Arabs. So German officers converted to Islam as well. Okay, so that's something. And of course, Hitler's said to have said, the only religion I respect is Islam. The only prophet I admire is the prophet Muhammad. That's Ahmed Huber quotes his friend Hitler in Kevin Coogan's book, The Mysterious Ahmed Huber, Friend to Hitler, Allah, and Ibn Laden. So, yeah. So these are some wonderful quotes. Now let's look at Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler, assuming that I've got this correct. Christians live under illusion of a Jewish-based myth. They worship a Jewish deity. They believe the Jews are God's chosen people. Christians cannot condemn Jews because they would be condemning their own faith. How can the most insidious enemy of all time be the very people you base and trust your life upon? You can't criticize the Jews when you're hoping to spend eternity with a Jewish God. Okay, so those are Hitler's words, but of course Hitler, yeah, he wasn't exactly a fan of religion. Okay, and of course people claim he was a good Christian, which of course he did not follow what we would call Jesus's doctrine, right? So any comments or questions before I go on?
Guys, questions? If you have any, please raise your hand. No? Please continue.
Okay, so now let's go to Palestine, and this is the Hitler Youth of Palestine. Every country, as you know, needs its own little Hitler Youth, and the Palestinians did their part. Okay, now this says the first Arab-Palestinian flag included a swastika and was presented in the presence of Nazi officers. I believe this was actually the flag of the Hitler Youth. Okay, I don't think this was an actual, but notice if we have a look here, Harry, what is this word here? It's Palestina, exactly. Palestina for Palestine. So yeah, very, very fascinating that here we have, and again, you can see here, Palestina. This is the wonderful new Nazis of Palestine. Why do you think this isn't discussed in mainstream media? Why do you think this doesn't become a major talking point to discuss the Nazi history of the Palestinians?
Very interesting.
So was anyone familiar? Were you guys familiar with any of this before?
I never saw that before.
Right, so the Palestinians were Nazis, very loyal, very faithful Nazis. Their leader, the leader of Palestine, volunteered to join the Nazis, was a paid agent of the Nazis, was a general in the Nazi army. All right. So, yeah. Anyway, he raised hundreds of thousands of troops, and now my German's a bit rusty. I don't speak it as much as I used to, but this is the original letter. Okay, this is the original letter that the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem sent to Hitler, and he promised that all Arabs and all Muslims would fight side by side with the Nazis to kill all Jews. Now, Eternal, you'll notice he doesn't say just, hey, we just want to stop the Jews from coming to Palestine. Apparently it's about murdering them all, because that's the peaceful solution. That's the peaceful Islamic thing you do. You kill people. It's peaceful murder and genocide. And it says Reichsführer, okay, the leader of the Reich. Anlässlich des Tages der Balfour-Deklaration von England am 2. November 1917 abgegeben wurde und in der den Juden die Errichtung eines jüdischen Nationalheim in Palästina versprochen wurde. So, from the day that the Balfour Declaration from England on the 2nd November 1917 was written, okay, was signed, was declared, and in that the Jews have started or founded a Jewish home, a national home in Palestine, or were promised a home in Palestine, was die Araber zu einer 25-jährigen Kampf voll Blut und Opfer. Okay, the Arabs have been involved in a 25-year fight full of blood and sacrifice, der noch in Gange ist, that is still going on. Van Leste veranstaltet das Islamische Zentralinstitut zu Berlin einer Protestkundgebung den festen Entschluss der Araber und der Muslime, so the Arabs and the Muslims promise, right? We protest in den Kampf gegen die Juden und ihre Helfer, so the Arabs and the Muslims will fight against the Jews and their helpers, their assistants, Seite an Seite mit Deutschland, side by side with Germany und seinem Verbündeten bis zum endgültigen Siege durchführen, to fight for our victory, till our final victory, to achieve our victory, zum Ausdruck zu bringen. So we want to express our victory. Ich beehre mich, Ihnen beiliegend eine Einladung zu dieser Kundgebung zu übersenden. I am honored, Ihnen beiliegend eine Einladung, so to invite you, eine Kundgebung, I can't quite translate that correctly, I don't speak German that often, mit vorzüglicher Hochachtung, with my respect, Amin al-Husseini. So basically he says we will fight side by side against the Jews and any of the assistants of the Jews because we're peaceful people. Now let's have a look at this a little bit over here. I used to do, yeah. Now the army that history forgot. Okay, Nazis rekrutierten systematisch Muslims, etwa 600.000 kämpfen in Hitlers Armeen. The Nazis systematically recruited Muslims. Approximately 600,000 fought in Hitler's armies. So I'm just going to go to translate.google it all. Okay, I'm just going to go to translate this. You don't have to listen to my tortured German translations. Oh, bugger. To English. Yeah, it should have translated that to English. And for some reason it didn't do that. No, it's, good grief, it's German, sorry. German to English, yeah, my bad. The Nazis systematically recruited Muslims. Around 600,000 fought in Hitler's armies. Now, why is this not made public? Why is this not a common point of discussion? Because Muslims always want to come across as squeaky clean and everyone else is dirty. So notice that there's always the claim that, oh, the Jews this, the Jews that. Muslims have been very, very good at hiding their complicity with the Nazis during World War II. Everyone can mention everyone else who was bad, but somehow this should show you just the stranglehold that Islam has on academia, on the press, on the newspapers and so on. They have an incredible hold to hide their complicity with the Nazis. So Hitler could not do anything with Christianity, but he loved Islam a lot, because in the Wehrmacht and SS he let hundreds of thousands of Muslims fight for Germany. The Nazis systematically wooed Islam, shows the new book by historian David Motadl. Okay, so understand the Nazis were losing, the Führer needed new soldiers, and of course Hajj Amin al-Husseini was very, very happy to volunteer. Okay, so yeah, sorry?
Lloyd, we have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Nunia, please go ahead.
Yeah.
It's okay, actually. You answered it when you continued, but carry on. No worries. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm just curious, what was the question, though, if I may?
Nunia, he was curious about what was your question.
He was asking earlier, was anybody familiar with the Germans, basically, and with the Masons? And
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with how that all ties in the Kahifa. And there was other pictures. I've watched a video with a gentleman called Professor Walter Weiss, and he actually talks about this whole Islam connection and things. So it was really good. I don't know whether you might be familiar with him.
I've watched Walter Weiss talk on some subjects, and I'm afraid to say that on some things the man talks out of his butt. He has no idea what he's saying. Either he's being
Yeah.
deliberately dishonest, or he just actually has no clue what he's talking about. That is my honest perception. On some things, he probably is accurate, but on other things, I've just seen the man talk absolute crap.
With the links in regard,
For instance, I mean, look, I know Islam extremely well, and I've seen him say things that I was just like, good God, like, you got to be really ignorant to say some of the things he said. So I would take whatever he says with a pinch of salt, I mean, honestly. But certainly, yeah. So understand the Muslims. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
that's fine. You carry on because you hit a few things. So no, that's fine.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, because I've watched Walter Beath before, but I'm a little skeptical. I've just seen him make too many, at least to me.
1 second,
Yep.
Lloyd.
Go on.
We have Dr. Ariana Love here.
Okay, great.
Yeah? No, for God's sake.
Hello, Lloyd.
Good evening.
I've just gotta say that I think it's really funny how you're like misleading these people. It's like so wrong. You're lying to all of them. All the thousands of references you have are just lies.
Lloyd, that's
Is this
Alex,
the transgender version I was about to say?
No, because Love is not going to come and do anything about what she said, and I thought Alex is going to be Dr. Love for a while.
Okay, right. So now, so now I want to speak to some of the questions that Eternal raised earlier about, this is actually, it's actually Palestinian land, because actually it used to be like belonging to the Palestinians, in the past, and we should like give the land back, and I hope that was an accurate representation of what happened. So I want to show you something that was written by the Supreme Muslim Council of Jerusalem in 1925, which at the time was headed by a man you would know as the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Islamic Nazi that we just discussed, the Nazi general who worked in the SS. Okay, and let's have a look at what his Supreme Muslim Council writes in their 1925 guide to the Al-Haram al-Sharif, right, in Jerusalem, the sacred enclosure, right? So the 1925, a brief guide to Al-Haram al-Sharif Jerusalem, which is here, a brief guide to Al-Haram al-Sharif Jerusalem. And it says here, published by the Supreme Muslim Council, admits, the site is one of the oldest in the world. Its sanctity dates from the earliest and perhaps from prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. As we know, Solomon's temple was a Buddhist temple. Solomon was a Muslim. It was a Muslim temple, right? And so they've identified it. So I guess game, set, and match. Oh gosh, it belongs to Islam. This too is the spot, according to universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, which is fascinating. They don't say here this was in time immemorial Islamic land. They say no, it was Jewish land belonging to Jews, which is really, really interesting. So maybe Eternal, you want to pick up the phone, call Palestine, tell them they've got their history wrong, that this is actually not Jewish land, and how dare they go against your bad history. Okay, so let's have a look and see. So this is the book. This is a scan of the book, and this is all inside. You can see here. Here's a PDF. If you guys go to the links, which should be pinned, you'll be able to access all of this material and have a look at it for yourself. And let's have a look. Here's a picture, and it says here, visitors should blah 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 blah. Okay, and let's continue. And it says here, the words Al-Haram al-Sharif, which can perhaps best be rendered by the august sanctuary, denotes the whole of the sacred enclosure. Okay, blah blah blah. The two principal edifices are the Dome of the Rock on a raised platform and the Mosque of Al-Aqsa against the south wall. And it says here, its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. It doesn't say its identity with the Palestinians, who are Muslims, who didn't come from Crete, but actually were followers of Muhammad long, thousands of years before Muhammad was born, is beyond dispute. It says Solomon's temple. Now, I believe Solomon, I could be wrong, but I believe Solomon's in the Bible as a follower of the Jewish God. Tell me if I'm wrong. This too is the spot, according to the universal belief, in which David built there an altar unto the Lord. So understand, even the Nazi Mufti admitted that this was a Jewish holy site. And here they admit that they invaded. So let's have a look. This guide confines itself to the Muslim period. The starting point is the year 637 AD. In that year, Caliph Omar invaded and occupied Jerusalem. So how come they don't state here that the Muslims invaded and occupied Jerusalem, 3000 BC? Very odd. So I guess these guys were very bad historians. So I do apologize, Eternal. They didn't phone you to ask you for historical advice at the time. So what I say, get on the phone, call the UN, let them know they're wrong. And one of his first acts was to repair the site, blah, blah, blah. And it became sacred in the eyes of the Muslims as the place to which the Prophet is one night miraculously translated. Now we can get into that in another time, but as I said, some people say he physically was moved there, and his wife says he was in bed the whole night. He was there. I saw him. Anyone who says that he left is a liar. So I don't know, do we believe that Muhammad's wife is a liar, or you guys figure that out. So anyway, it says here, from this rock, the Prophet, according to the tradition, ascended to heaven on his steed after visiting the mosque. Of course, this would have been, before 637, before there even was a mosque. So I have no idea what mosque Muhammad visited, because this is decades before a mosque was built. So you tell me. So the Caliph ordered a mosque to be erected by its side. That's interesting. He erects a mosque after they invaded in 637, but Muhammad apparently went there well before. So how, I don't know. So understand, okay? So there we go. And so that's the little story that they tell us here from this actual book written by the Nazi Mufti. You would have thought that the Muslim Supreme Council would have said something else if that were the case. Any comments on that?
Just incredible knowledge. Thank you so much. Any questions, guys, or comments?
Yep.
No.
Okay, so let's have a look. So earlier was it Arthur that asked about a bit of a chronology. So let's have a look at this. I mean, this is a so I mean, you guys are welcome to go and fact check this. But as I said, every single thing that I'm using, all of this here, has been made available to you. The link has been given to you. Look at it yourself, examine it, and find it for yourself. So 3761, the land of the Hebrews. Okay, so God owns the land and gives it to the Semites, right? Then you have 3724. Then Titus destroyed the second temple in 3828. Okay, 68 AD. 3828 BC, 68 AD. Right, and Hadrian renames the land into Palestina in 131. Right, so it's Hadrian that renamed the land to Palestina. It was never known as Palestina. Remember, a little territory where the Philistines had invaded from Crete, the guys from Greece, okay, the Greeks. So what was the guy's name? Eternal. You need to explain to me if the Palestinians are Greeks, okay? Because then they need to go home to Greece, right? So he renames it Palestina. Now you've got 1948. So minus 1812. It's 1812 BC, okay? Nimrod and the seven nations, so you have the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hittites, the Jebusites invade the Fertile Crescent. So these guys are invaders, so they clearly own the land. Now these guys were there first, it seems. Then you've got 1272, Israel. You have the 12 tribes, you have King David, King Solomon. Oh my God, King Solomon's part of Israel. Oh, good grief, looks like the Muslims agree that King Solomon was a Jew. Okay, fine and well. Then you have Judah and Israel, division into 2 and 10 tribes after the death of King Solomon. That's minus 796. Then you've got 3,205 years down the line. You've got at minus 555 BC, Judah and Assyria. Okay, they destroy Israel. Then you have Babylonia. Nebuchadnezzar, the second, destroys Judah and the temple. Okay, that's 421 BC. Then you have Persia. Cyrus the Great allows Jews to build the second temple. So the Jews are back. And then, of course, 312 BC, Alexander the Great is there. Then you've got the Hasmoneans, right? Then you've got here Rome, 36 BC. The second temple is destroyed again. Hadrian renames the land into Palestina. Then you have Byzantine, the new name of the Eastern Roman Empire, and Constantine the first adopts Christianity. Then in 634, let me see, that's 4,394 years after this land is discussed in the biblical record. 4,394 years later, now we've got ourselves some caliphates where some Muslims invade. Okay, then you've got the Crusades. Okay, 1099. So there was a whole back and forth. Then you've got the Crusade. Then you've got the Mamelukes. Then you have the Ottomans. Then you have the UK. Okay, that's when you had the original flag with David's star. Then you have 1948, the Declaration of Israel, and then this is 5,727 years later. So I'd say these guys have more than like 5% of the time they've been in the land, so I guess they have a reasonable claim to it. And in 1967, okay, Jordan abandons Judea, Samaria, Egypt abandons Gaza. The Palestinians are then born in 1967. They never existed prior to 1967. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, slightly controversial one, Lloyd.
Sure.
We have on record, and I've actually witnessed it. One example would be a Jewish daughter, very well educated in this country. It just comes out with bullshit like Black Lives Matter, and there are too many white people in these islands.
Mm-hmm.
And the political program that's running here, this multicultural program, there are a number of key Jewish people who've, said quite openly, this needs to happen. We must have multiculturalism in Europe.
So look, is that Jewish policy for all Jews? Is that based on some biblical doctrine, or are these people just crazy pathological communists?
I don't know, but there are any number of NGOs that are assisting in the transporting of people across from the African continent into Europe.
No, agreed. So look, there are lots of Jews that are also obviously wanting to end Israel, but these people have been indoctrinated, just as you have problems in America these days where lots of Americans have become blatant, overt communists. Yeah?
I couldn't agree more, and I was talking about this very topic earlier today. And I've studied the origins of communism, which is what we're facing in terms of this corporatocracy and technocracy that we're facing. And it's interesting when we look at Klaus Schwab and his ambitions. But anyway, look, carry on, because this is absolutely fascinating. It provides a different insight. And I always like to look at as many different perspectives as possible.
Okay, no, I'm glad. Thank you. So yeah, hopefully it's not as well ordered as I'd like to be in terms of my usual presentations, but I wanted to show you a different perspective. Why don't you know about the 600,000 troops that the Grand Mufti raised to fight on Hitler's behalf? Why don't you know about the Nazi SS division, the largest in the Nazi army, that were all Muslims? Why don't you know that the Nazi army had Muslims fighting for them? Right? Why don't you know that one of Hitler's generals was a Nazi, and several generals, I believe, converted to Islam? Right? Why aren't you familiar with all of the fact that the Nazi party itself was born out of Sufi Freemasonry, was born out of Sufi occultism? Right? Don't forget, the Nazis had the concept of the Übermensch, right? And the Übermensch was supposed to dominate, subjugate, and if need be, kill the Untermensch, right? The Superman, the Übermensch, the superior man. But of course, so because the Aryans were perfect, the perfected race, right? Islam teaches the very same concept. Sufism teaches the same concept of the perfected man, the Qutb. Okay, Muhammad was the perfect man, called the Insan al-Kamil. Actually, I'll just write it here so you guys can see it. Al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect man. Okay, the perfected man, the most complete man. I think it translates as insane as a camel myself. Okay, I think I'm right. Okay, so that's Muhammad. Al-Insan al-Kamil, as insane as a camel. So understand that it's a Nazi concept of having the perfect man, the perfected man, okay, which they got from this whole concept of the Aryans and the whole occult idea that they could perfect themselves. And of course, let's go have a look at what Baron von Bottendorf was teaching them. So let's have a look here. Secret practices. So he states here. So he teaches, originally published in 1924, this rare book by Baron von Bottendorf reveals the secret spiritual exercises of the Bektashi order of Sufis, as well as how this order, known as Oriental Freemasonry, odd where they get that, as Freemasonry, let me just highlight that, preserves the ancient spiritual doctrines forgotten by modern Freemasonry. Now, hey, okay, fine, whatever. Okay. So Bottendorf explains how the mysterious abbreviated letters found in the Quran represent formulas for perfecting the spirit of the individual. Don't forget, your modern wokists also believe that you can perfect mankind, that you can perfect them with the rules, right? The Sharia of wokeism, right? The communist Sharia, you can perfect people. And when combined with Masonic hand signs and grips, let's have a look at that. So when combined with Masonic hand signs and grips and conducted according to a schedule, these formulas incorporate spiritual power into the body and transform the soul from its base state into a noble, godlike state. The magnum opus of the medieval alchemists. And of course the word alchemist comes from, it's an Arabic word because the Arabs were huge into alchemy, but that's the story for another day. So understand that the whole idea of the Übermensch, again, came out of the whole Fool Society. That's where they got it. Hitler became a god. He was effectively worshipped as a god, right, by his followers. He was the god. And of course they were going to become the perfect man, the Qutb, right? So these things are a one-to-one correlation. Then of course you can look at the whole doctrine, the laws of the dhimmis within Islam, how when you subjugate a people, this is how you mark them as different and this is how you treat them. So these ideas could well have come from the Grand Mufti, and I believe there's a fairly good reason to infer that they did, that Hitler borrowed those straight out of Islam. Okay, so any comments on this so far? Any comments regarding this thing here, regarding this book?
I just wanted to mention that Hitler also copycat the assassins castle, you know, what's the name of it? You know, the one that he had in Austria, in the Alps.
Yeah, can't remember. Yeah, go on.
That was something that existed in the same way for the head of the assassins, but I will try to find the names. And I'm talking about the eagle nest, of course, but he actually copycatted from the assassins.
Yeah, that would be from this. Yeah. So oddly enough, the guy who founded that, I think there's a connection. You know, I've got a buddy who knows this history really well. He's just been very busy. I've been meaning to talk to him about it. But yeah, there's a connection. There's a connection there. But so tell me something. Have I been showing you guys a completely different view of Palestine and a completely different view of the Mufti and Nazism, and even the fact that the KGB is very much tied in with Mahmoud Abbas? Now look, we can just ignore the evidence. We can just say, well, there's nothing there and dismiss it. Or we can actually go, hey, maybe there's something here that has not been looked into. Maybe we need to look into this. Maybe we'll find that these guys are communist agents. Maybe we'll find that these guys are the bad guys, right? That's Mahmoud Abbas, right? This is, so now you've got Hamas. Now you've got the Palestinian Authority. Okay, you've got the PLO. You've got Yasser Arafat. All of these people are working and paid for and trained by the KGB, by the Russians, right? So there's a lot of stuff here that people are not talking about, because Islam is by no means squeaky clean. So have you learned anything new and taken a fresh perspective here?
I definitely did. I think you should be a speaker on behalf of the Israeli state, because nobody does that so well.
Thank you.
Seriously, it's incredible. I think Eternal wants to speak to you a little more. Would you allow that?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead, Eternal.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But you mentioned me a couple of times. I don't know what I've said to perhaps anger you, but in any case, for me, it's just a matter of understanding. These things that you showed are very interesting. I've never seen it. By all means, it's a new thing. It's quite interesting. I would like to have some sources. This one that you're showing now, I was just interested in that image. You stated
this. Yeah. Sorry?
You stated how they moved across, right? So if you look on the Roman side, I was just interested why they named, as you say, Israel to Palestine. Where did they get this name from? Is it from the Greek?
It was called Syria. It was called Syria Palestina because, as I said, the Philistines invaded, and that was a sore point for the Jews at the time, that their land was invaded by these invaders. Remember, the Plishtim, Palestinian means invader. Right? It doesn't mean we were the original settlers. It means we invaded your land and stole it. That's what invaders mean. So they simply use that to insult the Jews. Sorry, yes, Harry?
That's the meaning of the word in Hebrew. Plishtim, Philistines. Plishtim are invaders. That's the exact word.
Yeah, people who steal your stuff and rape your wife. So that's what invaders means. Doesn't mean original settlers. It means people who came from outside to steal your crap.
Why did he name the land that way against the Jews? Was he naming that
To insult
the Jews,
them.
because he
To
said the
insult
Jews were
them.
invaded?
To insult them.
Why?
Because he
Isn't
didn't
it weird
like
to call
them.
them? Okay, I see. Okay,
I
it's
mean,
just
like,
weird to
well, what do
name
you do with
Jews
people
that
you...
way.
Because the Jews revolted against the Romans, and to punish them, he said, okay, we're going to call this Palestina. Syria, Palestina.
It's a combination of insult and humiliation.
Thank you for that, Walter. Yeah, I mean, this is hopefully not rocket science. You know, it's like the way Trump calls people like low energy Jeb. It's like an insult, you know, gets under people's skin.
One thing that really gets under people's skin is that the notion, as you look at it, that you have Israel creation at the 1948, right? But when the Jewish people claim that they have a historical right based upon thousands of years, it could also be stated with the current understanding of the establishments of nations under the UN, you need certain things to establish. So that means the Palestinians, as they currently stand, ignoring the history as people claim, Israel exists, Palestine exists, based on the current establishments of what you need.
Sorry. Sorry. As we said, we can identify land that was owned by the Jews, right? We can go through the biblical record, go through the archaeological record, but no, I'm afraid there's no Palestinians. It was simply a nickname given to the land by the Romans around about this point. So no, because the Palestinians don't appear anywhere here. Okay, if you want to give them a homeland, let's send them to. Okay, hold on. You know what? Let's send them here. Let's send them home. So let's go because let's look at the island of Crete. Okay, so let me see. So yeah, we need to send those. So we need to move the Fakistinians. Okay, Fakistinians. We need to send them from whatever the heck. We need to send them from here all the way to there. So I'll tell you what, I'll throw in $10. You throw in a bit of money, and we get them some boat tickets. What do you say? Those rubber dinghies. Ask George Soros if he's willing to help out. He's pretty good at that. So we send them to Crete because, you see, calling the country Palestina wasn't because the people were Palestinian. So please get this through your very slow head, your very thick head. Okay? Understand, you're not as dumb as you sound. I know this. You're simply pushing an agenda, so stop wasting my time and being stupid. The land was not called Palestina because the people were Palestinians. It was simply called Palestina as a reminder of these Plishtim invaders from Crete. Now, okay, now please, okay, stop being stupid, deliberately stupid. Okay? One more time with that nonsense, and I am going to stop you from speaking to me ever again. Are we clear? Eternal.
I don't understand why you threaten me.
Are we clear on this point, Eternal? Yes or no? Pick one. Yes or no? Yes or no?
I'm debating with you.
Okay,
Have I
Harry,
said anything
please,
wrong?
Harry, if you don't mind, silence him, please. I have no interest in speaking with him anymore. So, on this point, look, I have little patience for idiots, okay? And seriously, I'm starting to think you're an idiot now. I've been patient, I've been nice up to this point. The land was not called Palestina because it was occupied for thousands of years by Palestinians. That, there is no basis for that in history, and you are lying to me and to yourself and everyone else if you make that claim. It was called that as an insult to the Jews based on an incident about a people that never even occupied that particular territory. Okay? So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm not going to let you speak again. If you're going to bring that topic up, sorry, you've had your opportunities. I've been patient with you. And sorry, I just don't have time for propaganda. Okay? So if you have anything to say, you are free to start your own channel, make up your own presentation, present it here, I don't care what the hell. Do what you like. Okay? So that's it. So, okay, any other points from someone who's not trying to be a complete idiot? Excuse my French. I'm from Africa, by the way. I'm probably a little bit too rough around the edges for some.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys, or comments? If think they will be afraid to talk now.
Sorry, no, it's look, sorry, it's just
No. We don't have
I
any
would
more
suggest
questions, right?
I would suggest one thing, Lloyd, and that is that the reason that area of the
Mhm.
Earth is of such geostrategic importance, it is the crossroads of the Fertile Crescent of both terrestrial and maritime traffic. And
Mhm.
I happen to know that there has been a progressively massive technology transfer under something called the Talpiot project, that is, and that Israel has been designed in order to become the fulcrum of global control. That's what I've learned.
I must admit, I know nothing about what you've just spoken about. um, yeah, look, so fine, fine and well. I know nothing about that. Look, I'm gonna bring up some of these discussions from Islam, from Islamic doctrine, which discuss Islam and the Jews, just so you have an understanding of why Islam wants to do what it wants to do. This is Ibn Kathir discussing the Quran, verse 930. He states here that fighting the Jews and the Christians, okay, that's Jews and Christians, is legislated in the Sharia and Islamic law because they are idolaters and disbelievers. Allah the Exalted encourages the believers, that's the Muslims, to fight the polytheists, the disbelieving Jews and Christians, who uttered this terrible statement and utter lies against Allah the Exalted. As for the Jews, they claim that Uzzair was the son of Allah. The Jews have never made such a claim. There is no record of such a claim, so Allah is not very smart for someone who's all-knowing, and Allah is free of what they attributed to him. As for the misguidance of Christians of Isa, it is obvious. This is why Allah declared both groups to be liars. So this is what Muslims take out of the Quran, and of course they have to fight, and fighting, this means to fight, to hurt, to harm, to kill. Okay, I know this is not showing up very well for some reason in the broadcast there. For some reason it's being downgraded heavily. Okay, so let me see here now. Let me just go find all the references to the Jews first. Okay. Now, in the Sharia, in the Islamic Sharia, okay, the objectives of jihad. This is the Islamic law, the sacred Islamic law. The Caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians, and the war continues until they become Muslim or they pay the non-Muslim poll tax in accordance with the word of Allah Most High. Now, this is from the most famous Sharia law manual in the world, the Umdat al-Salik, okay, the Reliance of the Traveler. I could also read from the Hidayah, but that's much more detailed, much longer. Now, the destruction of the sword is incurred by infidels, although they be not the first aggressors, as appears from the various passages in the sacred writings. Infidels may be attacked without provocation. This is from the Hidayah, volume 2, in a chapter called the Institutes. This is the most prominent of the Islamic law manuals for the Hanafi school of fiqh, and this one is from Shafi fiqh. Right, so now you've got two major Islamic manuals of the two major groups of Muslims in their Islamic law that state this is jihad. This is the legal definition of jihad. Okay, now let's continue to look for more references to Jews. Okay, let me see. There was okay. So hold on. There's another term I've got to find here. I wish to expound. Okay, so notice here again, Muhammad says, right, so the apostle said, this is Muhammad, says, kill any Jew that falls into your power. This is an instruction from Muhammad in the Seerah, the Gospels of Muhammad. They are euphemistically called the biographies of Muhammad, but really the Seerah of Muhammad are a record of his wars, right? So it's a record of his warfare, which is Sunnah, which is the example for all Muslims to follow. But also, it is the record of Muhammad's deity, where he becomes the counterfeit Jesus. He becomes the Islamic version of Jesus, and he becomes greater than Jesus. He becomes the replacement of Jesus. Jesus is simply the prophet who foretells the coming of Muhammad. So thereupon Ma'isa bin Masud leapt upon Ibn Sunayna, a Jewish merchant with whom they had social and business relations, and killed him. That's in the Sirat Rasul Allah. Okay, these are the page references. This is Muhammad's first and earliest biography. Muhammad said, you the Jews should know that the earth belongs to Allah and his apostle. Now when he says the earth, he means the whole earth. to Allah and His Apostle, and I wish to expel you from this land. That's in Sahih Muslim 4363. Then Umar heard the Messenger of Allah say, I will expel the Jews and the Christians from Arabia, and I will not leave any but Muslims. Sahih Muslim 4366. Understand, it is Islamic doctrine that they need to expel the Jews and the Christians from Arabia. As far as they're concerned, they own the land of Israel. They have always owned it because they were there for 5 minutes, some 1,300 years ago, and therefore, for in perpetuity, it is waqf. And therefore, they must at some point take that land from the Jews, just like they need to take Spain, just like they were once in Vienna. They need to take Vienna, they need to take Germany, they need to take all land on the planet. Okay, now let's have a quick read here through the Islamic Constitution of Iran. Actually, let's have a look. Yes, that'll be interesting. I'll actually go to the main. I'll do this from here. Let's look at the Constitution of Iran. So this is the opening to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They speak here of a religious army. In the formation and equipping of the country's defense forces, attention must be paid to faith and ideology as the basic criteria. So it's a religious theocracy. The army of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps are to be organized in conformity with this goal. They will be responsible not only for guarding and preserving the frontiers of the country, but also for fulfilling the ideological mission of jihad in Allah's way. That is, extending the sovereignty of Allah's law throughout the world in accordance with the Quranic verse, prepare against them whatever force you are able to muster, and strings of horses, striking fear into the enemies of Allah and your enemy and others besides them. So they want to go and obviously kill and take over the rest of the world. So let's have a look at what Hamas might have to say about this. So let's look at what Hamas has in their charter. Oh, by the way, yeah, this is going to be fun. Let's have a look at how nice Hamas is, because we mustn't talk about how bad they are, right? The Palestinian authorities crush dissent. Arbitrary arrests and torture is systematic because the Palestinians are the good guys. Ramallah, the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, right, and Hamas authorities routinely arrest and torture peaceful critics and opponents, Human Rights Watch said in a report released today, as the Palestinian Authority Hamas feud has deepened. Okay, so you've got a 149-page report, one way, zero dissent, because yeah, it looks like they are being tortured by their own government. They are breaking human rights laws because Hamas is the good guys. The Palestinian Authority are the good guys. Let's continue. So let's have a look here. Let's look further. So Hamas, let's have a look at the Hamas Charter, Article 28. Israel, by virtue of its being Jewish and having a Jewish population, defies Islam and the Muslims. Well, we've just seen from within the Islamic doctrine that, of course, well, Muhammad didn't like them. He said, kill them, right? And Hamas is going to do just that. So by virtue of being Jewish, they refuse to surrender to Allah, they refuse to surrender the land, and therefore they defy Islam. So it's not about, oh, well, they're going to move into our land, so we've got to join Nazis to kill them, it's like, because it's like we're just doing it peacefully. It's like, no, it's Islamic doctrine that tells them they have to kill people. Hopefully our friend will actually get that through his head. Hamas's ultimate mission, no matter how long it takes, is to fight the Jews and kill them, to replace the Jewish state with an Islamic caliphate. So let's see. The Islamic resistance movement aspires to realize the promise of Allah no matter how long it takes. The Prophet, says the hour of judgment, that's the end times, right? The final coming, right? The apocalypse will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, so that the Jews hide behind trees and stones, and each tree and stone will say, O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. Except for the Garkad tree, for it is the tree of the Jews. That's Hamas Charter, Article 7. This is a hadith. Okay? The Garkad tree is the box thorn, right? So, unfortunately here it says, according to the Prophet's words, Muhammad's words, that the Muslims have to fight the Jews and kill them. And even the trees and stones will say, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. Now, let's see. Okay? And again, here we go, Article 7, right? Let me see if there's anything in Article 9. O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. So that, and of course, now let's listen to, of course, when you read the Hamas Charter, right, it's a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. Now, we do know, if you read through some of the notes that I didn't share, but basically 4,000 agents were paid by the KGB, trained with the idea to go out. The whole point was to proselytize the narrative that the Jews, with Rothschild money, were controlling America, controlling the banks, and taking over the world. That was actually a narrative that was started after the humiliation of the Six-Day War, right? After that defeat. So the KGB got involved because they wanted to use the Arabs to defeat the Jews, defeat the Americans, right? Because of the communists, because as we know, the communists are the good guys, and everyone is dumb enough to fall for it. So with money, they have taken control of the world media. They mean the Jews here. News agencies, the press, publishing houses, broadcasting services. With money, they sparked revolutions in various countries around the world in order to serve their interests and reap profits. They were behind the French Revolution, the Communist Revolution. They're behind most of the revolutions about which we hear from time to time here and there. With money, they have formed secret organizations all over the world in order to destroy those countries' societies and to serve the Zionist interests, such as the Freemasons, the Rotary Clubs, the Lions, the Sons of the Covenant, the B'nai B'rith, etc. All of these are organizations of espionage and sabotage, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that is Hamas Charter, Article 22. As I said, it's a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. Okay, so you're welcome to have a read through this at some point. Now, notice that Hamas states in Hamas Charter Article 15, there is no solution to the Palestinian problem except by jihad. What is jihad? Well, it is to fight the Jews and the Christians, right? That means you too, right? You're not a Jew? Well, you too. So, yeah, you work it out what this means. This is from the Hamas Charter. So, Islam is not a religion of peace. Islam is a religion of war, and it fully intends to take over the world. The Iranians intend it. Hamas intends it. Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, so let me see if we can find anything on the Quran. Let's have a look at the Muslim Brotherhood. Let's see if we have anything interesting here about the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, so let me see. The Deputy Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood said, you know that our main and overall mission as the Muslim Brotherhood is to empower Allah's religion on earth, to organize our life and the lives of people on the basis of Islam, the Sharia, to establish the rise of the Muslim nation and its civilization on the basis of Islam and the subjugation of people to Allah on the earth. Definitely sounds peaceful to me. The Muslim Brotherhood is working everywhere to restore Islam and its all-encompassing conception to the lives of people. So yeah, that's as you can see, they're very, very peaceful. Now let's have a look if I have anything additional here on the Muslim Brotherhood. So al-Banna, Hassan al-Banna, the Freemason and Sufi, he stated, okay, it is the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations and to extend its power to the entire planet. Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who was the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, states the Muslim Brotherhood's main objective is the establishment of an Islamic state under Sharia in Egypt, in all Muslim states, and in all states in the world. This is a prelude to the re-establishment of a worldwide Islamic caliphate which will dominate the whole globe. Now, hopefully you understand that these guys are very patient. They're very, very well funded. We can discuss we can go over the money trail another time, their political influence another time, but understand everyone's looking at, oh no, we've got to blame the Jews, right? We have to ignore the Muslims because why? Why exactly? Why should we overlook this information? Why do we only have to keep blaming one group? Because let me see, there's a if you put them on a scale, there's a billion times more Muslims on the world than there are Jews. Okay, and if you actually start looking at their revenues, their oil monies, the amount of money that they earn, there's a ton more money that the Muslims have to do what they show that they want to do here than the Jews will ever have. So, but that's a story for another day because yeah, I'm swimming against the stream here. But I understand if anyone can find anything peaceful about the Islamic mission, and don't forget the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan, okay, the Ikhwani Muslimun, they've got, I mean, unofficial numbers, they have 100 million adherents. They've got up to 8 million members, although the official numbers are 2 to 3 million members. Don't forget, there's only 8 million Jews in the world, but the Ikhwan has like 2 to 3 million members. So just their members alone is like the third of all the Jews in the world. So yeah, that's a lot of people. I'll stop here. Your thoughts?
Just a small correction. There are like about 13 or 14 million Jews.
Oh, really? The numbers have gone up. Fascinating. Okay, yeah. So that's good, yeah. Sorry, in Israel there's about 8 million people, and it's not all Jews. Yeah, 6 million Jews, 2 million Muslims in Israel. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
The presentation was incredible, as usual. Thank you very much for putting all that together. I really appreciate that. I'm sure the audience will appreciate it as well.
Yeah.
Guys, any questions or comments or anything you want to
Actually,
add?
okay, like, let them ask a question, then I will speak a bit more about the Muslim Brotherhood. But please, guys, do you have any questions?
Dave, any comment?
Why are you picking on me?
You know why.
Yeah. No, I want you to carry on. I want to carry on learning what you've got, Lloyd. And at some point, in fact, probably off microphone, I'd love to sit down with you and test what I've learned.
You can call me, dude. You've got my details, so just give me a call. I'm free during the day, so if you are, I am too.
Yeah, I'm not free at the moment. I've got a very ticklish situation to deal with. It might put me offline for a bit because I've been a very naughty boy in terms of the system of state. My name is known, my voice is known. I've had spooks creeping around me, and I've had some very
Okay.
unpleasant encounters.
Call me on
with what's
Signal.
going on.
That's encrypted.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Understood. Yeah. So yeah, I've been a bad boy too. I guess.
I like
You know,
bad boys, and I
Yeah.
noticed that about you. Okay,
Yeah.
carry on.
Yeah. So I like bad girls too. I met my wife today. I said to her, "You're a bad girl. Go to my room." So, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood, just since we are on this whole point, because remember, Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is in Palestine, right? Hamas is, they've got the whole thing going with the Palestinian Authority. So let's have a look here. These documents laid bare the nature, mission. So basically, in August 2004, a top Brotherhood operative, Ismail al-Barasi, and his wife were pulled over when a Maryland Transportation Authority cop observed her videotaping the structural supports of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. Now, why should she be videotaping the supports of a bridge? Who knows? And they discovered that he was wanted in connection with Hamas fundraising activities. 80 boxes eventually of documents were recovered in a secret basement, a hidden sub-basement in his house. They contained hundreds and thousands of Islamic Brotherhood documents that were never denied. The authenticity was never challenged in court. This went to court and led to the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the largest terrorism financing conspiracy ever prosecuted in the United States. They were sending money to terrorists in the Middle East. Okay, so what they found was there were a couple of documents that really stand out. Let me go over these. These documents, now this is also, remember, this is part of Palestine. This has direct links to Palestine, right? Those peaceful Fakistinians who just want to murder everybody. These documents laid bare the nature, mission, plans, and infrastructure of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. The most illuminating was the Brotherhood's 1991 strategic plan for its operation in the United States, entitled The Explanatory Memorandum on the General Strategic Goals of the Group, dated May 22, 91, written by Muhammad Akram, one of the top Muslim brothers in the United States. And it has the mission statement for the Muslim Brotherhood in the US that should concern not just every American. Right, so let's have a look. So their stated purpose is to destroy Western civilization from within by its own hands and the hands of the Sharia adherents. The role of the Muslim Brotherhood in America is to destroy America. And they write here, the process of settlement is a civilization. This is, remember I mentioned waqf. Anytime Muslims put down a mosque, that area is waqf. It's like putting down an embassy. It's conquered land. And then they're supposed to expand around that. They put down land. Okay, they take over land. So the process of settlement, remember, hijrah, okay? The process of immigration is sunnah. Muhammad did it, right? He moved from one place to another to establish Islam. Hijrah is a form of jihad. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process, with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the Muslims, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. If you're atheist, well, it doesn't matter, they don't care. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And you know what happens when the final hour comes? They're going to murder all the Jews. And don't worry, the Christians get the same treatment too. So, yeah. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen, would all Muslims be mujahids? Would they all be jihadis? The Muslim Brotherhood's strategy for destroying Western civilization is described in an undated document entitled Phases of the World Underground Movement Plan. These documents were entered into court. They were never challenged. They are regarded as being 100% authentic. The lawyers for the Islamic side never challenged these. They never claimed they were fake. These are legitimate. The Muslim Brotherhood is recognized as being in phase 4 of this plan since at least 2017. So they have a 5-phase plan for the infiltration, not just of America, understand, Europe, you name it, you pick it, they're coming after you. Canada, definitely. South America, oh, they're working on it very, very hard. South Africa, oh, yep, they're there too. They're all over the place. Germany, Holland, Belgium, oh, yep, they're busy. Recognized as being in phase 4 since 2017, with phase 5 being a violent coup, the phases with their self-assessment are as follows. Phase 1, the phase of discreet and secret establishment of elite leadership. This phase has already been implemented in the country. Phase 2, phase of gradual appearance on the public scene and exercising and utilizing various public activities, and it has greatly succeeded in implementing this stage. It also succeeded in achieving a great deal of its important goals, such as infiltrating various sectors of the government, gaining religious institutions and embracing senior scholars, gaining public support and sympathy, and establishing a shadow government secret within the government. They've already achieved this decades ago. Phase 3, escalation phase, prior to conflict and confrontation with the rulers, through utilizing mass media, currently in progress. Phase 4, open public confrontation with the government through exercising the political pressure approach. It is aggressively implementing the above-mentioned approach. Training on the use of weapons domestically and overseas in anticipation of 0 hour. It has noticeable activities in this regard. Phase 5, seizing power to establish their Islamic nation under which all parties and Islamic groups are united. All the above-mentioned phases are preliminary steps to reach the above-mentioned phase. The underground movement is also a plan exclusive to the post-seizure of power stage. So, the Muslim Brotherhood has established a secret leadership as outlined in the document. Okay, this is a list of 29 groups. There are hundreds now. There are hundreds. Understand? So any comment on this? Because of course everyone wants to blame the Jews, but everyone wants to give the Muslims a pass, and I wonder why. Maybe they paid shills for Islam and not paid shills for the Jews.
Yeah, I think that this by itself is very important information to demonstrate how they are subverting our Western civilization and the potential damage and danger they are presenting.
So where is Dr. Ariana Love to come and explain to me how Islam is not a problem, how it's not a threat? Where is Chris, who was here a few weeks ago, who tried to trap me with this Zubaydah al-Arabiya woman? Where is he to explain to me how Islam should be given a little pat on the head and maybe a blowjob and sent away smiling? Okay, because honestly, yeah, this is open doctrine of one of the of what is known as, well, what is probably, let's say, the second largest secret society. The Muslim Brotherhood is a secret society, just like the Freemasons. Good grief! And who says they started the Freemasons? The Sufis. Who founded the Muslim Brotherhood? Oh, a Sufi who was also a Freemason. Good grief! I wonder if there's a coincidence in that. Any comments or questions from you guys?
Guys, questions or comments? Please raise your hand.
Just one. It's interesting to look at the episode surrounding Lady Diana. I won't mention it here, but there are certain relationships that I'm aware of because I've moved through many different demographic levels in British culture because of my work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one very significant thing which I've realized. There was a project I was involved in which was driven by an Iranian for a cartel that I never knew the identity of.
Mm-hmm.
It fits rather too well.
Well, we showed you the Iranians having their... I didn't go through the whole constitution, I just read you the preamble, but it states within their constitution that their whole point is to take over the world, so they're competing and they're also collaborating. Like the Iranians, while they are technically Shia and they are competing with the Sunnis, they're also very much in collaboration with the Qataris, because the Qataris are competing with the Saudis because they want control of Islam. So there's this whole crazy game going on. Yeah.
I did get the probably one of the most prominent Dawa practitioners, who is a quote revert unquote, to admit that he believed that Sharia law, Islam, should rule the world online. And I've encountered this before. And there was a young lad who worked for me for a while who had become a revert. He was, should we say, intellectually challenged, had issues, and they soaked him up. And the one thing that I learned was that this form of indoctrination creates a trigger where they can become violent because you're questioning their faith.
They're required to. I've discussed that at length more than once, where I've spoken of the doctrine of commanding the right, al-nahi wal-munkar, commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. We've discussed that in the past. Yep.
As for getting Zubida to come in here, I know a great deal about her. And I think it probably served you better than her. She ran away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just going to try and find a couple of slides, because dawa, I want to show you what dawa means.
Yeah. Question about Zubaida. How come she's so active in the ethno-nationalist groups? I mean, shouldn't they dislike people who are not British?
No, they're allowed to work together if it benefits them.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because when I go on there, she has a propensity to do exactly what you've been doing on here, but you've been doing it in a more orderly manner. I've never had a channel, because I don't believe, I believe the best way of exposing fools and idiots is if they trigger to ad hominem attacks and they become overzealous with the control of the microphone, which both Zubida and F. Dower do.
Okay, right. Yeah, she wouldn't face Adam and she wouldn't face me, right? I know too much about Islam. I know way more than she ever will. You mentioned Dawa. So let's have a look through. This is the Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 2, page 170. In the book itself, page 184, which will appear in the PDF reader. They mention here that they speak here of Dawa. Okay, ultimately this discussion leads to Dawa. They speak of Machiavellian tricks, hiyal, to recruit new adherents and detach them from their religion. So Machiavellian, as you know, you all know who Machiavelli is, and you all know about the prince. It is a matter of control. Okay, so in the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is written by a lot of Islamic scholars, the top Islamic scholars in the world, since this is the gold standard of Islamic scholarship worldwide, they mention here that they utilize Machiavellian tricks to recruit new Muslims and detach them from their religion. Let's have a look at what dawah means. So the former caliph commissioned disputants and controversialists to carry on a parallel campaign by means of the pen. Okay, and they wrote propaganda. Now notice, propaganda is dawah. Propaganda, dawah. Right, let me just minimize that. Notice, dawah means call, invitation, certainly, but it also means propaganda. Right? Notice it says here, pretension, which means to lie. So propaganda, so dawah is not evangelism. Dawah is political propaganda. We'll read here, the theocratic state based on monotheism. Right? So they want to establish an ideal theocratic state based on monotheism. They want to attract the greatest possible number of people to this idea. And then they want to give power to their representatives. That would be the imams, the Islamic imams. And they're using propaganda for this purpose. And this purpose, this propaganda is called dawah or propaganda. Okay, which can often be translated as mission or propaganda. The dawah is one of the means of founding a new empire. Remember, a theocratic empire. And it says here, you have dawah, which was strictly speaking propaganda for the Prophet's family. Understand, dawah is not evangelism. It's not Christian evangelism the way we would understand evangelism. It is political propaganda, and propaganda is lies. Islam, as you know, flat out encourages and makes obligatory lying. Okay, lying is, as we covered in detail prior to this. Okay, there are numerous Islamic doctrines of lying, which we have covered in the past. So, yeah, any further comments on this?
I don't have any. Guys, anyone have a comment or a question? Please raise your hand if you do.
So understand, everyone is going on about, oh, you know, the Jews. It's like, you know, well, what they do is like, you know, they're collaborating with the grey aliens, and they're involved in the Bigfoot grey alien Illuminati alliance, you know. And what they're doing is they're providing big noses, okay, because the grey aliens are like small and they can hide behind the noses, you know. So when the Jews walk around, the aliens are like hiding in the nose, and then they can jump out and they can tap into your phone and your computer, you know. That's what's happening. It's the Bigfoot grey alien Illuminati alliance. And here you have actual documents that were presented in court from an actual real organization that has a history with the Nazis, that has a history with the KGB, that has a history of terrorism, that is known to be anything but the good guys, and they want to take over the world, and they claim that they are here at phase 4. Now, understand, Al-Qaeda had a 21-year plan, okay, 7 phases, 3 years per phase, starting September 11, 2001, ending in, oddly enough, 2021. Okay, their plan was to take over the world, okay, take over the US government by 2021. That was their plan, okay, so that they were going to, they were going to take over the US by 2021. The Muslim Brotherhood, their plan is to take over the world by 2028. In 1928, they launched a 100-year plan. So they were going to create chaos in America, chaos in Europe, okay? And they were again going to utilize this chaos to take over the entire planet, or the major governments. They've already taken over the UN. Muslims run the UN, okay? Muslims are in charge of the UN. They're the most powerful political body, the largest single political bloc inside the UN. Right, that's Muslims. That's not Jews. It's Muslims, right? And so what you have is these guys have a plan. That's it, a 100-year plan ending in 2028. The Al-Qaeda plan was due to end this year. I think they were probably 2 years. Trump put them behind by a couple of years. Okay, but according to their own plan, their 7-phase plan for Al-Qaeda, they are very, very close to being on track. And the Islamic Brotherhood, their plan. Now, you mentioned, Dave, earlier that you saw this plan. These guys are on track because they're collaborating. So this is a very well-known, this document actually has a history that is proven, as opposed to the conspiracy theories crap that I've got to listen to from most people.
It would certainly explain why even English churches are being used to accommodate these illegal immigrants that I have believed for a long time are part of the Ummah.
Right. Okay, and I've shown you guys this before. Okay, this is by Al-Ghazali, a Sufi. Now remember, the Sufis claim to have founded the Freemasons. They claim to be the original Freemasons, the real Freemasons, the genuine Freemasons, right? And they speak here of, and this is Al-Ghazali, the #1 Muslim, the Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam, the only Muslim to have this title. He's the most respected and senior Muslim after Muhammad himself. And they state here that the perfect Illuminati, right? He is stating here that the perfect Illuminati in his book, the Mishkat al-Anwar, the niche for lights, that the perfect Illuminati are the Sufis, Muslims. Okay, these are his words. This is how this was written out by a Sufi scholar, right? So they are speaking here of the obeyed one, blah blah, the sun to essential light, the whole Luciferian light. They do a thing called light mysticism. So understand, the Sufis call themselves the perfect Illuminati. Now, of course, everybody loves their stupid conspiracy theories, and I think most of them are entirely stupid, because the Muslim Brotherhood is something real and practical, but people love, I don't know, fairy tales. They love fantasy. Here you've got people who have the doctrine of jihad designed to take over the world and slaughter you and your family and enslave them. And I can go into lots of depth on that, and you're not going to like what you learn. But understand, you're not going to find this in the Talmud, oddly enough. We can discuss that at some point if you guys would like, but it is all very much found within Islamic law. So I'll end here. That's me. I'm done. Any comments or questions?
No, I just want to say thank you very much. That was an incredible presentation, as usual. Perfection is what we can expect from you. Always full
Thank
of
you.
evidence.
I was planning to do
Yeah.
slavery, so this I kind of changed my mind, as you know, a bit late. You know, so
Yeah, I just want to bring to the attention of the audience that Dr. Ariana Love earlier today in the main group, she basically said that we are misleading people. Lloyd then challenged her with a lot of arguments and evidence and all the rest of it. She never bothered to even answer, and she completely disappeared. And this is something that I noticed that they are all the time doing to Lloyd. They come, they say some destructive sentence, and then they disappear. They never deal with his claims and hard work and evidence. So that's really bad. Um, so thank you for being so consistent and for showing us all the evidence that you are collecting. It's an incredible work. We respect you very much for that. Thank you, Lloyd.
very welcome. Thank you.
I second that.
Yeah, get in
said
touch.
that.
Thank you very much.
Will do. Will do, Lloyd.
What did you want to say, Nunya?
Said that.
Thank you, none your business. Yeah, Dave. So we can chat on Signal. So let's try to swap details. Set up an email account on. Proton Mail. Yeah, we'll work something out. Okay, we'll figure something out. Okay. We'll figure something out. So, okay, I'm sure there's some way we can figure out to communicate. So then we can get on something encrypted and private. Okay, guys, so thank you. That's it. Hopefully, understand, I don't like to deal in what we would call conspiracy theories. I like to deal in history. Okay? Things that can be documented, things that have some degree of reliability and some reliable degree of credibility because there's numerous sources that point to the same thing. And I can tell you now that if you're going to start talking to me about the Talmud says, I am going to end up humiliating you. I'm going to have fun doing that. I am going to humiliate you. Okay? Let me be clear. Okay?
1 second. Dave, do you have anyone who can challenge Lloyd about the Talmud from those groups? Maybe we can have an interesting debate and allow Lloyd to destroy their arguments?
Yeah, it's something I'd need to set up. As I say, and I really apologize for this. I'm in a very ticklish situation at the moment.
I understand. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Lloyd, thank you very much, and we will see you in 2 weeks, right? Because next week you're not going to be.
Yeah, I'm
available.
traveling again, so yeah, I'll be traveling. So unfortunately,
1 moment, maybe we can keep it going for a few more seconds because
Sure.
we want to put our jingle.
No worries.
I love how you say that, Harry. The jingle.
Oh, I want to mention something on the Talmud, okay? People always say, like, I've had people come to me and state, oh, the Talmud says, okay? Which is actually a good reason to just reach out and slap them. And they'll state that the Talmud says that, okay, that a Gentile who reads the Torah must be killed. That's like one of the favorites they love to throw out. Okay? So notice here it states when you get to the end of that whole discussion, the Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yohanan's statement because he makes this really nasty statement. And Rabbi Meir says, from where is it derived that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest? And it says, and it says from the Bible, it goes to Leviticus, you shall keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And the phrase, which if priests, Levites, and Israelites do, they shall live by them, is not stated, but rather a man, which indicates mankind in general. So the Torah is for the whole world. Okay? You have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest. So for some reason, the guys who hate Jews, and let's be honest, you hate Jews, right? Let's just be honest about that. They always forget to add this little part. So they'll tell you the Torah, the Talmud says if a Gentile reads the Torah, he must be killed. Well, it says here that if you engage in Torah study, you're considered like a high priest. So, yeah, for some reason they keep on persisting in all of these lies. Now, this is not to say that the Talmud, and of course I'm going to be accused of this, but this is not to state that the Talmud is holy and inspired word of God. It's not. It's the work of the rabbis, and of course one can point lots of fingers at the rabbis for different things. But lying is it's not something that you should be doing, and people are lying about this. Okay?
Thank you, Lloyd. We are going to open the floor for a free conversation, and good night.
Cheers, guys.
Islam on Trial with Lloyd de Jong. Only on Rough Radio. Part of the Resistance United family. Join us on Telegram at t.me/Resistance United Worldwide. Or join us on our private social media platform at resistanceunited.org.